Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our council meeting today for Tuesday, the 27th of August. I have brought a symbol for Cancer Day, and the support of the many people in our district that have had personal impacts, but actually for the many volunteers that do support the well-being of our community for our volunteer groups. So I thought it was beholden on us as a council and as leaders in our community to support that amazing mahi that does go on within our community. So it's just a symbol of the connection that we do have with our community. I'm just going to go through the first order of business, and with your indulgence, before we go through the confirmation of minutes, I would like to take the first decision item, which is 5.1, further funding for the Soldiers Block. Now, the reason that I'm doing that is that I'm aware that Judith has to make a personal appointment, which is really important, and I would like us to be able to manage that decision to support Judith with her duty of care. So I am going to suggest, and with your indulgence, I would like to do that. So I'll just go through the normal order of business down to urgent business and looking at separately circulated information, and then if we can be prepared to do that decision item, that would be, I'm pleased with that. So with that, just looking around the room, it's great to have everybody with us. So there is no apologies that we need to receive for the agenda, so it's good to have you all here. Our health and safety matters, you'll all be very aware should we need to exit the building out the doors you came or the door to my left. It was interesting when Pauline and I were away at conference in the middle of one of the sessions, all of a sudden the fire alarm went at Takina in Wellington, and about 500 delegates all had to file down the stairs out onto the cold southerly street that was whipping through Wellington. 2 fire engines arrived and they had to check, and it was a faulty sensor. So 10 or 15 minutes maybe later, Pauline, we were allowed back into the building. So, these things happen in the busyness of the work that we do in a public forum. That's fine. I will read the affirmation for today for our council meeting, and we all will pledge that we will faithfully and impartially use our skills, wisdom and judgment throughout the discussions and deliberations ahead of us today in order to make responsible and appropriate decisions for the benefit of Haranui District at large. We commit individually and as council to the principles of integrity and respect, and to upholding the values that we believe distinguish and enrich our district. Thank you. In regard to the items on your agenda today, councillors, is there any conflict of interest that needs to be declared today? No, thank you. And we are live streamed and being recorded. Thank you, Graham. Thank you. And just before we go on to the decision item, urgent business or separately circulated information, you have all received the separate material that's been circulated in regard to the deputation at 1 PM from Mr. Andrew Mason. There's a letter and another sheet, so I'm assuming you've all got that. Thank you. And then in a public excluded item 8.6 in regard to the CEO performance review, you should have all received that as well for this afternoon. Thank you. Okay, so with that, and before we go into those minutes, can I just ask Judith to come forward, please, and I'll just ask councillors to go to page 40. Thank you, page 40 in your report, and we will manage this. So Thanks, Judith. I know that we will have read this paper, but if you could just take us through the points that you would like to address, and then we will consider those in its fullness. So thank you.
And thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors, for accommodating commitments this morning. So this report seeks some further funding for the Soldiers Block project. There are 3 recommendations. One is to support an application to the Rata Foundation for 300,000. The second one is to approve 125,000 from the current balance of the Queen Mary Development Contributions Fund. And the third is to approve 430 from the Queen Mary Development Contributions Fund, which is accrued interest. So, as you are all aware, the stages 1 and 2 are currently underway. We refer to them as stages 1 and 2, but they're intrinsically linked. And then the separate stage 3 is the immersive visitor experience, often referred to as the WETA proposal, a place of light and life. I think most of you, all of you, have seen that presentation last year. So the budget, the original budget for this, which was established, I've said actually in here that was through the long-term plan, but actually it was through the annual plan, was established last year, and that budget was 3,176,000. With the updated tender price and variations, the contract supervision, building consent fees, and some other variations, the project now cost is 3,601,000, and that results in a shortfall of 425,000. And as I explained in the resolution, 300 of that is going to be through an application to the Rata Foundation. In the report, I do talk about the examples of the variations. More specifically, I guess once they got into the building and started opening it up and taking off linings and got under the floor, there was discovery of more asbestos. So that has resulted in additional costs that weren't expected. There are significant additional electrical costs, including an upgrade to the main supply, new mains and sub-main boards, and new lighting and power to the building. And so while provision was made for that, now that they've got in the building, they realise that needs a more significant upgrade. Then there's also a variation to the drainage. The original intention was to connect into the existing drainage, but then put new drainage in there. And what wasn't originally budgeted was, included in the budget was the professional services. So this is the contract supervision. So that's in essence, stages 1 and 2 in the shortfall. The third resolution is the 430,000, which is the initiation of stage 3. And that is the fundraising campaign and the concept plan, the concept design package for a place of light and life. And both of they're set out on 42 and 43, quite a bit of detail about the place of light and life and the fundraising campaign. On page 44 is the financial implications, and the budget sets out where the 3,176,000 is where that was established, and then the Queen Mary Development Contributions Fund, and thank you, Jason, for sending that all out in the report. So if there are any questions on that specific part of the report, I think we'll get Jason to help me with that. Great. So that is essentially a quick summary of the report in those 3 resolution recommendations. Thank you. Answer any questions.
Good, thanks Judith for that, and thanks for just stepping us through the fullness of the report, both the intent of the application and the financial status as well. I think that's been quite helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, one additional point. At point 16, one of the in discussions with the Rata Foundation, they're interested in how we will continue to keep the story alive between stages 1 and 2 and stage 3. So we have some existing information panels, but to support the funding application to them, they're looking for a bit more of that. I refer to it sort of loosely as an exhibition area. It would be comparatively small, using all the information that we've got. We've got a video, we've got a bed, we've got all sorts of bits and pieces, and pretty confident we can get our hands on more information to provide that sort of exhibition space, which is visitors to the building will be interested in the history. It will be attractive to visitors, and hopefully provide a wet weather alternative and a education program for the 15,000 school children. So there's a bit of extra work in there which is covered in the 425 shortfall. That is an addition. Sorry.
Okay, I mean, that's quite a nice sort of bridge from where we are now to where we could be once the project reaches its fullness, I guess. Is that how you see it?
Yes, and I guess so focused on the bill, we've really thought about how do we tell that story and keep that story alive, because it will be some time before we raise the capital to develop whatever that experience looks like in the 2 octagons.
Sounds like a good exploratory question from the Rata Foundation, doesn't it, really, to manage that? But anyway, look, that's a point, I guess. Questions, I guess, from councillors as to the intent of the report that you've seen before we look at the recommendations. Thank you, Robbie.
Just 3 quick clarifications. Queen Mary Development Contributions Fund, is that inputted globally or locally? The contributions that go into that from
Collected across the district.
Across the district. The 300 from the Rata Foundation, what's the expectation around that? Is that we're optimistic we'll get that, or is it we don't know yet?
Reasonably optimistic.
Okay, and the last one is the Better Off funding. There's been a bit of chatter coming from central government this week around Better Off funding. Are we still, there's no signalling or anything that anything's going to change there, that's still...
The Better Off funding, there was Better Off funding in some councils that was uncommitted, and ours was already committed. We signed it off with DIA, we said we've committed this money, and they supported that commitment. So once you've got contractors on the job, etc., they're not going to pull the money.
But I think what you're raising, actually, Robbie, is certainly some of the media pickup from some of the minister's comments, perhaps even a conference last week about the use of that money that has yet to be committed, like what else is. Yeah. Thank you. A question, Councillor?
Just a really a point just to make, Madam Mayor, is say I fully support the proposal. I'm aware of bits and pieces of this before it came to the table. In particular, Judith has shared a discussion with me in a little more detail, just on a private basis, with regard to the Queen Mary Historic Reserve Trust, and I just want to say it's really only in there as a line item, but that has my absolute support. That is a great initiative.
Great, thank you. It's good to hear the support of this project. I think, you know, for it's something that we've been desiring for many years, you know, but it's not without some of the financial issues that, you know, we need to supply and support. So you've got a question, Vince?
So this project's just, so how much money is left over for the contribution funds have been for the development of the Queen Mary site, isn't it? And so that we've got other buildings. haven't we? So how much money is going to be left for those?
I think this uses it all, doesn't it?
It pretty much does use it all. You'll see on page point 41, out of the 4.4 million that we had assigned to develop or upgrade the Queen Mary, in 2010 and 2011, we've already spent 910, and the vast majority of the balance of that 4.4 was applied to the Soldiers Block. You can see these are remaining concept balance of about 315,000 and 125,000 of that will be applied based on the resolution or the recommendation to this. So that would only leave about 200,000 for other works.
So that's my question, what happens to the rest of the all within one project? It's not the only, because all the rest just go to reckon, right? So just asking,
Thank you.
You'll see a presentation later today regarding one of the other buildings which will involve significant private funding. And we all know that there's one of those buildings on the site that's particularly problematic and always has been.
I guess, I mean, so sorry, Gary, you had a question. I think you had
This
your hand
was
up.
just really a clarification to help, I guess, the thinking process on this is the Soldiers Block is the first priority. That's where the effort's gone in. And it was the Soldiers Block itself that really was the anchor point of getting the whole deal secured back in whenever it was, a long number of years ago with central government. The Soldiers Block was the priority. I'm not uncomfortable with the way the budget's worked out. What it really means is the other big building on Queen Mary North has to be a standalone development or whatever it may be in its own right, and so be it. That's the reality. The third piece is that development contribution was never developed with any focus on Queen Mary South. So that's a totally different situation, correct?
Yeah. Right.
So really, I'm comfortable with where the focus is.
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree more, Gary. I think that what we've got is a proposal that actually might support other projects unfolding, but I totally support this project and the fact that this is where our history is with our returned servicemen at Taha Māori and the drug and alcohol. That this is the building that has actually created that shared history, and I would support the fact that do it once, do it right, and enable the rest to come beyond that. But that's when my sort of set feelings. So I've got a few more questions coming. I think Vince and Dave, and then Tom. Thank you.
because we've got other buildings there, there's a nurses hostel.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to get my head around, do we just do capital contributions forever and a day now to just keep people get sick of that after a while?
The intention is once the 4.4 million has been utilised, that's the end of that contribution, unless we do another amendment to our development contribution methodology. But we had been collecting it for close to 20 years. There was a component that had to be refunded. That was a lot of fun. The clock was ticking on needing to actually do work, and this project came along and fitted the brief. So it's and we've got significant other funding attached to it. So it's all panning out, but there will be a point where that contribution will cease. Another 210,000 of contributions to be collected to bring it up to the 1.571 million. But once that's being received, it stops from that point.
Happy with that, Vince?
Yeah, and I just thought it was just, I see in the project that with the provisions for the accessibility of the community gym that we put in, so can you explain more about that, please?
Yes, so the existing, The existing gym is in the Hema Springs Pavilion, and there's problems there, frequently floods. So there's a potential to move the community gym that's into, I'm sure you remember Vince, but in the back of the building there's a little cottage, flat. The proposal was to move the community gym in there. So the accessible part of it is it needs an accessible toilet, accessible shower, and accessible ramp. So that's the accessible part of it. So there are ongoing discussions with the Hema Springs gym about whether they're interested in moving there, or another provider of a gym.
So I'm just trying to, there's other areas in the community are looking at gyms, and I'm thinking this is getting funding from, the other gyms don't get any funding. I'm just asking.
So through you, Madam Mayor, it's just structural.
That's a space,
Yes.
it's a physical space that could be used for a gym, but if it's not the gym, it might be something else.
Use
Yeah.
a stall and,
Yeah.
and, oh, we walked through there, didn't we?
Yeah, we
Three rooms.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very, very basic. Not, certainly not fit out with all the equipment or anything like that. It's just a space.
Comfortable with that, Vince? Yeah, awesome. I think, Dave, did you have a question? Oh, sorry, thought your hand was up. Sorry, Tom, and then,
I'm fully in support of the proposal. I think that this is such a key anchor project for Hamlet and Hurley. The confidence in the area and the support of the locals is absolutely amazing, and I think it's something we shouldn't underestimate. I think also having been lucky enough to go in there twice and see it, now that a lot of the panels and linings have been removed, you actually can see the genius of the architectural, or the architects in the first place. And there's been some amazing findings with regard to the windows and ventilation and how that was part of the healing process as well. The windows are actually totally unique, that the windows actually slide down into the wall cavity, allowing total air movement in and through and up. And it's quite an amazing air conditioning that was, obviously designed back in 1914, 13, and is quite spectacular. Indeed, Rosemary Ensor was convinced until recently that actually the place was built without windows. And this was a total shock to her to actually see that this ventilation system was in there. The floors and the ceilings are quite spectacular, and it's an absolute gem. And I think that I would urge you to support this. And I would say just the working conditions of some of the workers in there, to make sure that they damage the floor as little as possible. They have cut metre square holes in the floor, and they have been inside those holes digging out with a trowel huge holes to provide extra foundations and support, and it is quite an amazing job. And I think that it will be something that we will be so proud of when it's finished. Shouldn't miss this opportunity. Thank you. Worked hard on this for years.
Great, thanks, Tom. Is there any other questions or comments? Sorry, Pauline, and then I'll go to Fiona. Thank you.
Other than endorsing what Tom has said, just wanted to check in regards to Vince's questions about the other buildings on the site. We do still have a line entry in the long-term plan for maintenance of, so that puts me completely at ease, and like others have spoken before me, I'm completely in support. I think this will be fantastic for our district.
Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. But endorse everything that's been said, but also following on from Vince's comment, we will have to do something with the nurses block one way or the other within a given set of time due to earthquake strengthening, demolishing, and I assume that if there's no money in the fund, it will have to come from somewhere else or debt. So I think it's a really question to ask and something we need to consider.
Yeah.
Having said that, I agree, it was amazing going up there, and people have worked on this for years, and I think yes, it's great for Hanmer, but actually it is great for the whole district, and I was really pleased in our discussions as the working group when we were talking about taking this information out to the community committees and allowing everybody to be involved. I know that when we had the Big Anzac day up there with the lovely fountain in the background, and but people from all over the district, and so many people you hear have experiences there, and it really is a flagship for the district. The only comment in it, so I fully endorse it and I'm prepared to move the motions. I just have one comment that I raised at that time was we've put some extra money into using heating from the thermal pools, but when that becomes a separate entity and is being leased, then there may be some discussion to be had with the pools on where financial consideration, because they're separate individuals. So I'm happy to move the recommendations as they stand.
Yeah. Just hold on for that. I just want to hear from Karen first, and then everybody's. Robbie, yeah.
Point to me as well.
Okay, sorry.
After
So,
Karen.
yep. All right. So just hold on to that thought, and I'll hear from Karen and Robbie, and then Judith. You got something else to add? Thank you.
Well, just to say
Okay.
that we still have $1 million for nurses. So that was Jason will have that tucked away somewhere, but we do still have $1 million from the government to earthquake strengthen the nurses hostel. It's not nearly enough, but there is $1 million.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so it's been helpful, the discussion as well, and it's followed on from Vince. So Karen, I'll come to you, Vince.
Thanks, Melanie. I'd like to endorse this. I think it makes a lot of sense to me, and I note, I think it's number 10, there, but the intention is that there's no ratepayer money going into the stage 3, and I think clearly it will require a fundraising campaign that is is carried out by people who are very skilled and experts in that field, and I think that's really good. But I think if we approve this today, that will provide a stunning backdrop and venue from which to have that stage 3 project, and on that basis I'd like to support this, and if Fiona's moving on purpose.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to hold on to both those because I just need to explore. I don't want anybody to go away without having asked the question. So it's a question of clarity.
I just want to make what I think is an important point. Because I'm in agreement with this, but in the current climate, with talk, this isn't just a restoration project nice to have. There's far more to this. This is about protecting the history and paying respect for all of that. But at the end of the day, this is an attraction in Hanmer and the Hurunui that will wash its face down the track, and this isn't a cost. This is a win-win. So I think that's important. This isn't us doing something. This isn't a nice to have. This is a must do, and will be good to have down the track.
I'm so pleased I've heard your comment around that. Because that's really important in the current climate. So thank you for raising that and articulating in that manner. Vince,
I'm a question on the heating. I know coming from the Pools Board, we are watching hard our bore levels, and we've just changed our methane, and so we use less water. Are we going to have a problem now? Because that's a big area to heat. How is it going to be sustainable on our? We looked hard at that.
Yeah, if you answer it.
The heating system works off the wastewater from the pools. So it works off discharge water from the pool. So it's not going to require a greater drawdown of water from the pools. It's simply going to take that water, which has still got some energy left in it, and extract more of that energy out of the water.
In addition to that, there is gas in some. I mean, the building, when you see it, no insulation, windows aren't double glazed, no insulation in the ceiling, probably nothing in the floor. So it's going to take, on a snowy day like on Monday, it will take a lot of heating. So most of the time, the water will be able to heat it, but there is a backup provision to heat it with gas as well.
Yeah. And I think what I heard the other day when we had the privilege of walking through, there's a larger upfront cost, but actually that will tail off as we go. That will be supportive and managing going forward as well. So it's managing that sort of bell curve at the start of this process. So I think I saw someone else's hand. Was that you, Tom?
Yeah, just two things. Just to reassure Vince about the gym as well, that the actual community gym that is in Hammer does have an awful lot of their own equipment already, so that will just be moved from its existing place to the new location. I also just think it's important, incumbent upon us to ensure that this is not seen as a vanity project, as what we were saying, this is a restoration and showing respect for our forebears and the history of our district.
Look, I think we've heard some wonderful comments around the room for the value add of this project that we've undertaken for a number of years now, and to support the stages, and linking, I guess, and bridging into the next stage. It just feels right, and I think that we owe it to ourselves and our future, but more importantly, we owe it to our future, our history, and I think that's great. So I do have a mover, and I have a seconder for the officer recommendation as written on page 40. Fiona and Karen, are you comfortable with the wording?
Yes.
So I have a mover and a seconder for that. If there's no further questions to clarify, I'll put that motion. All in agreement with that, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Abstentions? Thanks very much, Judith. Rightio, councillors, if we thank you for letting us to do that early, but now that does, if we just go back to the minutes, and we'll look at the 30th of July and then the council meeting for the 6th of August, and then we'll just work through our normal process. So if you're happy to turn to page 4, and we've got the first page of the minutes of the 30th of July. I'm just going to whip through those, so please stop me if there's any corrections, or some of you may have let Graham know already. But page 4 and 5, 6 and 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Sorry, Robbie, thank you.
Sorry, I'm quick enough to get the ground, but
Oh, yeah.
page 9, 5.1. Team leader planning, I'm one of the planning team leader, and 1, 2, 4th line down, the Southwood spatial plan has been developed through, and should that be interactive instead of iterative process?
It's just changed as you went along, I guess.
Yeah, just be a healthy thing.
Yeah, so it probably is okay as iterative, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just iterative, just being that things changed as we went along.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you happy with that, Robbie?
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
fine,
okay,
and the
thank
team leader planning, but whether that's right or, and the paragraph below is same again.
Right. So you think it would just read better, the planning team leader? Is that what you're saying?
I'll check what that official title is.
Okay, all right, we'll leave that with Graham to sort that. Thanks, Robbie. Page 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and that takes us to page 20. So if there is no further alterations other than what we've just heard to those minutes, I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Gary, that we received those minutes to an accurate record. All in agreement, please say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried, thank you. Similarly, we'll just walk through those to see if there is any matters arising from those minutes. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Anna?
So maybe just a question, there were a lot of questions raised that were going to be looked at on the regional policy statement. I just couldn't remember when it had to be in and whether we would like to see the end result of the discussions. Page 10, draft regional policy statement.
Yeah. We might need to find out. I'm sorry, I haven't got an answer for that one.
That's fine, I just don't want to lose I'd
Yeah.
like to see what we
Yeah.
ended up with,
Yeah.
because there was I didn't know when the submission needed to be in.
Yeah,
And what we ended up actually submitting, because there was quite a quite a discussion on that.
No, but I know officers were instructed to take away and
Yeah.
do the work before submitting, so we can easily circulate it to the councillors, the
Awesome.
Yeah.
final version.
great.
That'd be great.
All we need.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool, thank you. Thanks, Fiona. 12, 13, 14 and 15. 16, 17, 18, 19 and 20. So no further matters arising in those set of minutes. Thank you. So councillors, that just takes us to page 21, which is the next set of minutes, which is the meeting on the 6th of August. And this, you'll remember, is a continuation of our reserve management plan submissions. It's mostly around Cheviot Vince, so you've probably had a good old read of this, but if we just work this through, councillors have probably checked for accuracy, so page 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. Thanks, Karen.
Yes, Madam, I just wanted to speak to page 31, the second paragraph, last line. And this may have been the way I was raising this matter, but really what I intended was that last sentence. She said it's important to Māori that we use Te Tiriti o Waitangi to acknowledge that there are two different versions of the treaty. That's what I was intending to convey, and I feel that the way it's worded there at the moment doesn't quite capture that.
Yeah, so what you're saying is more in line with what you actually said, that needs to be recorded in the minutes as opposed to an outcome. Yeah. Are you able to get that corrected, Karen? Okay, thanks, Karen. So page 31 again, 32, 33. 4 and 35 and 26. Is there any other amendments that need to be made to those minutes? Someone like to move that then we, with that minor amendment, that we accept those minutes as a true and accurate record. Thank you, Pauline. The second of Pauline. Thank you, Vince. All in agreement that we receive those minutes as a true and accurate record, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion carried. Thank you. So likewise, we'll just look through there to see if there's any matters arising from those minutes. So we're at 21.
Just on page 26, the old Cheviot tennis court. The whole area is taken up now as a terrestrial area. And I think just the developed potential to be updated to include area. I think when you look on the map, it's taken the whole area, so that's what it is really. There's really no room for anything else.
So it's not recorded incorrectly, or
No,
is
I'm just wondering what it's saying for other, because it says potential uses, but it is what it is now. There isn't really the potential there for other uses.
right? Okay.
It's really.
Okay, so maybe
The
it's
question.
removing that word potential out.
I just wonder if its designation could be just that, because that's what it is.
Well, Madam Mayor, officers are still working on all those
Yeah,
changes being incorporated before it comes back, so I'll pass that through to
okay,
the policy planner.
okay. And that'll just gives more clarity that it
It just gives
actually,
more clarity.
it is an equestrian arena and there's no further potential because
Yeah.
it's taken up all the space. That's what you're telling me, isn't it? Yeah, okay. All right, well, we'll leave that with Graham and I'm sure he'll follow that through. So thank you. Any other matters arising? I missed a couple of pages there, but someone will tell me. So 26, 27. Yeah, 29, 30, 31. 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. Step right. Matters arising in those minutes? That's great, thanks councillors, we'll move on then. So that takes us through to our known forward work programme. I guess there'll be some items that will be populated through into that as we sort of sneak through to the end of the year in the final quarter. So expect that will happen in the next wee while. Just a week slight correction, and it's my fault that I never got to report that before the Mayor's Diary. The Korero with Hariata Kahu on the 5th of August, that never happened, so that needs to be removed from that, thank you. And just for your information, as much as anything, on the 2nd of August, the meeting with Kyle Wakeman by Teams is actually that Hiranui Adverse Events Committee. So just thought you might be have some interest in that process, and that's managing the effects of the ongoing drought conditions that we continue to be in. And then on page 39, we have the Queen Mary Historic. So the working group, and I'll call on Fiona and Tom. We had the good fortune as a working group to actually have a look around the Soldiers Block the other day, last week. And I know a lot of it's been perhaps had a discussion with our decision item that we've just made, but Fiona or Tom, is there anything you'd like to add in actually seeing that site for yourself, and just as an update, I guess, on the working group status?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've been in it maybe once or twice before when we did the Anzac and walked through there when they had the big display on, and to see it now, it's just incredible, and I endorse what Tom was saying. We've got people working down underneath with little shovels, but as he said, when you start to really get into these buildings, it's the secrets like the windows, and it's just an amazing piece of work. And the fact that even the floors literally had springs in them, you know, they had a bit like you get in trailers underneath the wooden floors for dancing. Like, yeah, I don't know, but no, I was very impressed with the way it's being run, with what they've achieved, and I was impressed that you ducked when I threw a snowball at you.
Response. Thanks, Fiona. Tom, do you have anything to add just to share with our councillors, our colleagues?
I do hope that we can either arrange for a visit or get a really good video of some of the work that's going on, because I think fellow councillors could not fail to be stunned, stunned by the quality of the work and everything else like that. And the fountain, this incredibly old fountain that has been discovered and has been placed there, has been known or has been named Judith's Fountain, and is going to be a nice display at the front of the building. And Judith has a considerable amount of embarrassment, but some lovely, gentle amusement around that. It's really personal, and I think it's a credit to the work that Judith has put in over the years. I think it should be named Judith's.
Great. Okay, thank you. So that does take us through our agenda. I've kind of done things a little bit back to front to get us into today's agenda, but I actually just wanted to spend a wee bit of time, if I may, before we do our next decision item, which is 5.2, is just reflecting on conference of last week. I was going to do that at the beginning of our, welcome, but I needed to manage this for Judith. But There's been a lot, it's picked up a lot of attention in the media, and but I just thought I'd give you a bit of an overview. Pauline and I attended. Unfortunately, Vanessa wasn't able to come with us, and we were sad about that, but we understand that as well. So, but I think that Hurunui District was well supported by Pauline and our attendance, and Pauline was great company, and I just like to, I just think that was great. I went to the Women in Leadership, which was hosted by Nicola Willis, and she wasn't talking at all on the perspective of the Minister of Finance, but she was talking on her perspective of the challenge of women, particularly in public office, and in particularly around the remarks, the comments that are made through social media platforms. And I just am incredibly grateful for us in our district that we aren't exposed to that, but it's certainly a factor, and it's real. And many women that spoke talked about their personal stories, and I just thought, wow, this is something we need to be aware of. We need to stick to our value judgments around what's right and wrong as far as that goes. So that was a good session, which I enjoyed. The opening address by Mayor Tory Whanau and Chair Darren Porter from Regional Council, and the Prime Minister's speech certainly is, got the front page of, and it got everybody in the media hopping. He spoke about central government spend and the expectation of local government to do the same. Did not want ratepayers to be burdened with a laundry list of distractions, was one of his phrases, and that core business should be the focus of local government. And I think at the afternoon tea break, everybody was like, oh, that was a bit much, but I think his message was clear. Probably his tone, might have been different or could have been different. But actually, as I was willing to share her thoughts in a minute as well, but as I got through the next few days, I think there was a lot of unwinding of that, first statement, and actually what and how we can work. One can't do without the other. And there are some, opportunities maybe through regional deals, whatever, however that might unfold. Certainly looking at decision making. I'm just going to pull out some of my notes here. Focusing on decision making, providing performance reporting to drive communities' accountability, to consider greater use of shared services and improve financial sustainability. All of those things that were talked about actually sat comfortably from my perspective around what we presented our community with for our long-term plan. We were all part of that journey 12 months ago, where we looked at, potential rate rise of 28%, but, we're able to look at what are the things we actually want to talk to our community about. So, I tried to consider what we've been challenged with, but actually what our reality and what we're doing as well. So that was interesting. I attended we both attended the Mayor's Task Force for Job breakfast. Mayor's Task Force for Jobs is a really important function that we are performing on behalf of our district, but nationally there has been 6,000 young people placed into sustainable work. Now what we're doing really is changing one life, one at a time, not as a collective really. There are currently 42,000 young people or job seekers on the job seeker market in the under 25. So, that's, it's a big job. But without programs like NPFJ, some of those young people are likely to be in a welfare system for at least 2 decades. So, I think when you consider the impact of spend in the welfare system or the justice system to the impact of providing a spend in a more positive way, I think we need to continue to support that program. And it's good that we've got an extended, or collectively, the contract has been extended beyond the next 12 months as well, so that's great. Minister Simeon Brown, he talked about sticking to the basics, local water done well, partnering with LGFA, CCO, shared service, securing funding at the lowest cost, separating council's balance sheet to a new entity. So, there's a lot of that sort of story that we're coming from Minister Brown as well. I thought the CEO, Susan Freeman-Green, spoke really well about us as a sector, focusing on the promotion of national interest of local government through rating efficiency. Localism improves your bang for your buck, and reducing some of those levels of bureaucracy. And I'm not going to go through the whole 3 days, don't worry, guys. But there's a really interesting fellow called Dr. Oliver Hartwich, and he speaks, I've heard him speak twice now about bringing localism to life. And he talked about subsidiarity, and Vince will remember our good friend Dick Davison talked about subsidiarity several years ago, about decisions being made at a local level, to take care of our own affairs. And they've just launched a practical guide to localism and how to put localism into practice. And I just think that is something that's really powerful for us, because it's actually something that we do a lot of the time. And I thought about our coastal conversations in that process. So, it's a heavy investment. It's very intensive from a staffing and an elected member perspective, but actually getting the voice that people, bringing forward is really important. I thought Leanne Watson, she spoke, she's from Business Canterbury, which used to be the chamber. She spoke quite actively and positively around how the private sector drives our economy, and local government should be more intuitive to help shape how this would occur. And actually, it's not too dissimilar to what some of the questions that have been raised, or that we need to have good planning frameworks that actually drive our livelihood, and improve the focus on our business or the businesses that could be created in our environment. And so I thought there was some really good messaging coming through here as well. But we also heard from Justin Tipper, he is the Haere from Tahu. He talked about working with councils and local iwi. Chris Bishop spoke a lot around infrastructure and housing. Sarah Badley talked about autonomy and authority. So there was a lot of good themes, and there was a lot of couple of sessions on, one in particular, Digby Hall talked about adaptive dynamic pathways, which is our coastal conversations really. And we talk about what do we talk about?
Proactive relocation.
We talk about proactive relocation, and they're still talking about adaptive pathways. So it's just a twister to more. So interesting. So there's a lot of discussion around that, but I thought it was a really valuable 3 days. I was really proud to have good company, and we had lots of time where we could socialise in between the breaks, as you do at a good conference, so I think I just wanted to share that with you because it was sort of fresh in mind. Pauline, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have anything just a quick add on?
Well, I mean, I've got lots of notes here, Murray, but you've covered a lot of it. But I am just going to pull out a couple of things that that just stuck with me that I highlighted, if I can find them now. Oliver Hartwich, he talked about, and I really this hit home for me, is don't hate the players.
Yeah.
There's that whole, central government, local government, tug of war, I guess. Don't hate the players, hate the rules, and let's change the game. So I thought that's a really good message for decentralisation. He also talked about if we knowing what we stand for, because if we don't know what we stand for, then what will we fall for? And I thought that was really important. Sarah Badley, loved her metaphor. She started off speaking about the bridge to where she lived, and she used it as a metaphor. And you know, that whole, just the importance of actually get past things, just build a bridge. And the key things that she talked about was where we are right now in local government, doing nothing is not an option. But with whatever we do, one option doesn't fit all. And we just need to be looking for a way forward with whatever we are hit with, really, to build that bridge. Citizens assemblies, you didn't speak about that, Mari. Maybe I'll touch on that. There was just a little snippet about citizens assemblies, and I think that that's something that in New Zealand could be really powerful, where they take 100 people based on the absolute data from their area, so 51 female, 49 male, and making sure that they've got an absolute snapshot of the population. So farmers, you know, people who might have disabilities, immigrants, whatever percentage they make up of the population, and make them into not a focus group, but a citizens assembly, and the difference between that being that filling this group actually with the information and making them experts, if you like, and then giving them the issues and seeing if they can come up with some solutions. So it's really reasoned and informed recommendations that could come back, and I wonder if we could do something with that. And then Digby Hall, he was just really down to earth in his discussions around mitigation, adaptation and disaster preparedness. When he spoke, there was none of the whole blame game or whether or not, you know, climate change is man-made or cyclical, whatever. It was just, look, this is where we're at and we just need to get on with it. And he talked about, actually, we need to do stuff that's off the shelf. We've actually got everything that we need to make changes. We need to use our leverage. So what are the big things? And, you know, small cogs turn big cogs, and that can make a big difference, and making sure that whatever we do is beautiful. What else? I think maybe I'll stop there because you've talked about a lot of the key stuff and you do put me on the spot. Yeah. But yeah, I think that the real power for me lies in, I'm really proactive and just kind of wandering about and introducing myself to people, finding out where they're at and what the issues are, and you know, the projects that are happening in their parts of the world, I guess. So made some good contacts with some people in regards to things to learn about dog parks and developing wetlands and things that might be, you know, perhaps pertinent to us moving forward. So yeah, cool. It's good to make those connections, I think.
Excellent.
It's very powerful.
Thanks, Pauline. That's great. Okay, happy with that? Awesome. What we will do now is look at decision item 5.2, which is the projects to be carried forward for the 24-25 year. Jason, this is your paper. If we can just work through that, and then I will suggest that we will break for morning tea. Thanks, Jason. Welcome.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, at the end of each financial year, we do an assessment and wash up on particularly the capital projects that, for various reasons, haven't been achieved as had been budgeted. And what we do is, by council, what we do is amend the budget figures for the current year. So when I'm doing monthly reporting, we're reporting apples with apples rather than always referring to we're spending a budget from the previous year. So that just keeps a bit of a discipline for the budget holders to maintain. So page 48 is the list of the projects, and page 49 was a specific one for the community committee, which is a tradition that's been followed for a good dozen years, that there is little of budget applied to each of those communities. If the budget isn't spent, it is sort of carried forward for each of the community's benefits moving forward. That doesn't mean the budget needs to be spent, but it's just identifying, trying to ring fence previous budgets allowed for that specific community. But all the rest of the carry forward items are specific capital projects. There's a number sitting in water. You'll see the full treatment for Hiranui number 1. On the face of it, we initially had a budget of 3.1 million for that project. but that budget was increased based on a report to council during the year up to 4.6 million. So at the end of June 24, there was 4.16 spent. So the request has been to carry forward the remaining 465,000 of that adjusted budget to the next financial year. So the other projects are there. The biggest one, obviously, we've talked a bit about it, is Soldiers Block. We did have a budget specifically in the 23-24 year that we knew it would not be spent by the end of the year. So there was the remaining budget and an additional amount that's been approved will need to be allowed for in this current year. So the total amount of carry forwards has been assessed at 5.5 million of our total capital budget of last year. I think was about 37 million. So it's not as good as it has been, but there have been reasons for some of those projects, and obviously the biggest component of that has been the Soldiers Block, which has been requested.
Okay. I guess you've all had a good look at this for today's meeting, and have identified some questions that you may have of Jason in regard to these projects carried forward into the next financial year. So is there any questions? Thank you, Gary.
If there's no other questions, Madam Mayor, can I just, ask this, primarily of Jason. In terms of principle here, this is work we didn't do in the past financial year. So where there was spending, such as Huranui number 1, and I know that project numbers changed slightly, but if we were going to have done it last year, it would have been sitting in our debt line as at June 30. So effectively, our debt line as at June 30 would have been slightly lower than we had expected it to be, because we didn't do that work, it carries forward. So my question is, in terms of point 4 in the actual agenda paper, the potential addition of these projects, it reads, will have little effect on rates or debt. Can I reword that and say the addition of these projects will have no effect on the debt line beyond the carryover of that money, if you see what I'm trying to get to? I just want to get to a point that there is not a dollar of additional debt coming out of this transfer.
No, that's correct, because we had already forecast that work to be done by the end of June.
Correct.
Just recognising, and there has been projects that we had identified during the budget process that weren't going to be done, particularly a number of the development contribution projects for the Amberley area that we had forecast at 0 or a small amount, and actually re-budgeted it for year 1. So that's not part of it.
And I accept that projects like that in Amberley or the Soldiers Block are actually being funded out of DCs, which is a different matter. I was just particularly focused around any impact on debt. And I'm sorry to be pedantic, but I've got my answer. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that's it's good to have it and considered in another, just using different words that they do. Is there any other questions from council? Is someone of the mind, having read and consumed this information, that we should be approving the list of projects in the officer recommendation? If that's the case, are you happy to move that? If that's worded? Yep. And the recommendation, do I have a seconder for the officer recommendation? Thank you, Ross. Is there any other questions just before I put that motion? So Tom's moved, Ross seconded that the officer recommendation that council approve the list projects that have been carried out for the 23-24 financial year, 24-25 financial and recorded as part of amended budget figures for monthly financial reporting purposes. All in agreement to that, please say aye. Aye. Those against? That motion's carried. Thanks, Jason. That's fantastic. Radio councillors, I think that we should take a morning tea break now, and because we do need to work through, we have a deputation here at 1 PM, so I do want to work through and get through our next most of the information items actually in projected for 1 o'clock presentation. So perhaps if we have 15 minutes for morning tea, and I'll see you all back here at 10, whatever, 50. We are running pretty well on times, which is great to hear, but we've got 2 items but no discussion items. We finished our decision items, but no discussion items, but we've got our normal array of information items. But our first one does start with item 7.1, which is the governance of Eastern Reserve. Now, many of you will know this has come through the LTP process, submissions, and also the reserve management plan. And Hamish, this is your paper. If you would like to give us an overview of the paper, and then we'll see where that takes us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council had previously requested that following on from the work that had been done regarding the Amberley Eastern Reserve and governance arrangements for that reserve. There has been some lack of clarity about the reserve, but when the governance team went through the resolutions, the last resolution regarding the governance of the Eastern Reserve was on the 26th of September 2019, and that resolution is there. And as part of that resolution, that the council retains direct control of the reserve development and works with the Amberley Reserve Advisory Group sports organisation representatives. So that's the current situation. That's where we are. And I have not made any recommendations about changing that. I've simply clarified the position that the council is currently the decision-making body for the development of that reserve.
So I guess, yep, I'll start with Fiona, but I'm going to lean towards the South Ward Councillor. They've been through this process, and but thanks, Fiona. Your comments are welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe I was part of the council that made that decision, and I do recall a discussion at the time as to whether it was going to be all council officers and that it was or not, and it was important to involve and have discussions with those groups, but that it was going to be managed by council because it was such a long-term project.
That's cool. Thanks, Fiona. South Ward, I'm going to seek your support or direction around this, because you've been more recent to the best direction, I guess, is what we're seeking around this. So, Vanessa, I see your hand up.
Through the chair, actually, could you come back to me? Is there anyone else?
Of course.
I'm just trying to reword what's going on.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Thanks.
That's cool. comments?
Okay, all right, so I'll.
Start at
Madam
10.
Mayor, look,
Yeah.
yeah, and again, I'm trying to, I guess, frame this in the climate of what, I guess, Hamish, the intent of where you want this discussion to go. I know the way you framed it right now, that's the current situation, and that's what's on the table. I guess my question then is, given that it's now 2024, and that this document goes back to 2019 and so on, a lot of progress, a lot of discussions being had, a lot, the township is changing, growing, so on. Where do we as council, as collectively, see the role of the South Ward Committee itself and potentially as a community board? I know it's still got a gateway to go through, but I'll be positive. Where do we see the community board and or the community board or and or the ward committee sitting in this process? Because at the moment, the way this is written, it's fairly definitive in the sense that there is a delegation on a functional development and management of ideas and input is the word used, delegated to the reserve committee, reserve advisory committee, but that the decision and everything else sits directly with council. There is no reference to any other party. And I'm trying to understand within this discussion or this resolution or the receipt of this information where we actually take this. Because I'm sure if this was a Hanmer Springs situation, and I'm not picking on Hanmer Springs, but if there was a discussion going on about the development of a piece of Hanmer Springs that sat only with the council, input from a separate group, but with no reference to the community board, we would all agree we've got a missing link in it somehow. And I'm raising it in that sense. I don't have the answer at the moment,
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, but I just wanted to flag it.
Yeah. So what you're really saying is there's tension, there's 3 steps in the process: an advisory group, South Ward Council, and 1 or 2 or 3 of that configuration could or may not work well. But that's kind of what you're saying is there's a missing link. Okay, just trying to gather some thoughts, because actually if we're going to do anything, we need to make sure we do it well and we do it right, because this is the development actually relies on the government's role. Thank you. Are you ready now? Thank you.
Through the chair,
Give it a
look,
whirl.
subsequent to Gary's comments, actually, I had the same concerns. To provide local input in the development, I find that restricting it to one particular group is not local input. So I feel that that needs to be revisited. I'm not comfortable with the Amberley Reserves Advisory Group having that autonomy.
Okay, so I am going to actually lean on South Ward to get some progress to actually move this forward. We've identified, whether it's advisory group, South Ward and or council, we identify the groups, the influential groups, but actually what we need to gain is to provide officers some direction about who is best placed to manage that process. So I think that's what we're thinking. Robbie, is your hand just like tweeting there, or yeah? Give it a whirl.
Yeah, no, right there, the real question is, have we set up from here? But yeah, this does summarise how I kind of understood it, and I can see perhaps why there's been problems. Around the reserve group, the key words there is it's an advisory group. It's just feeds input, gives input, which is what it's asked to do. So I don't have a problem with that. And I said it was asked to extend it to local residents. It currently does, and it brought up a discussion at the reserve group as to how you choose those residents, or you know, at the moment they are called independents, I think we call them. And to be fair, it probably needs a system of refreshing that, or just checking that the right people are on the bus there along the way. But as it happens, one of those people lives across the road from Eastern Reserve, so at the time was considered, well, that's a fairly local one. So there's only ever been input, what, you know, things that they would like come from that group. And for example, you know, can we put 300K into the budget, which was done? Can we sort some different priorities, the water, the this, the that, the other, that was done. And there seems to have been a big void between there and perhaps council being able to say, yes, do that, and council officers being able to get on and do what they do well. So and in confusion as to, so I won't use my workshop terms, but basically the key who's actually driving the thing, I suppose. And so it's been a bit of a headless, to me, a bit of a headless thing. So yeah, I'd like to see how we do it, but the key thing is somehow we must stop the way that between 2019 and here, everybody's sort of, too many chiefs in there, too many people trying to have, push it this way and that way, and the end result's been nothing's been happening. So it's just something that needs resolving, because every time we get all the groups in the same area, when we've had the reserve group and the South Ward meeting in here, everyone was on the same page, everything was crystal clear, and you sort of think, right, we're off. But then somehow it's allowed to get ambushed and pushed and pulled around, and all of a sudden we're stuck in the mud again. So if we could sort of somehow resolve how that's going to be tidied up so we can move on.
And can I just ask, given that you sit on the reserve group, is that what you believe the reserve group expect, that they will have information, but they won't have governance of the development?
I don't think the reserve, as I understand it from being on the group through that time, they've never had a feeling that, oh, we're designing this thing. There was plenty that would sort of say, oh, the reserves group's doing nothing. The reserves group's there to advise and input, and basically wished us. They said, well, kind of like, if it was us, we'd shake things up. We've got to have water because we can't plant things without water. And then down the track, we're probably going to need some toilets, a playground. That's kind of it. That's the sort of the start of the team to kick things off.
Yeah. So from their perspective, they're happy with being influential, but not holding the governance ropes, if you like.
I don't think they ever felt that.
They had that. Okay.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's similar to looking after the ambient domain. I suppose down the track, it may come to feedback like that as to feeding back through one way or the other, lumping it in with the domain. I think probably that was maybe in the thinking, but it was never put on to the reserve group, the advisory group, to, well, you go away and design and tell us what we're building. That was never the case. Okay.
I think we're getting a flavour of some of the issues maybe that actually will help us sort of find a pathway forward.
Through the chair, I would actually like to see that we remove to provide local input in the development and just keep it to management. And then under that, the council retains direct control of the reserve development, and we could probably possibly slot in there in conjunction with Southwood Committee or something like that.
Can I just get some advice on some process actually, Hamish? We're not looking, without a notice of motion, we're not looking to change the resolution of 2019, but this is here for information to actually help give us some guidance, and that's the guide. This is the guidance that officers have been using to date, because it's an active and alive resolution.
Correct.
Yeah.
My view is that council and officers had lost line of sight on this particular resolution, and over ourselves going to South Ward and the Reserves Advisory Group, etc., and confusing those groups by asking them to pass resolutions regarding this, when in actual fact they didn't have delegation to do so. And so what I'm trying to do by putting this in front of you is reset. And by putting it in front of you, maybe you make a decision that you'd like to do something different. I'm not expecting that today.
No, that's right.
Just clarifying the situation, and then you can leave this to think about for a while and say, actually, we think it would be better to have this sort of governance structure. So, and the other thing is, without being too critical of the resolution, I don't think it's that clear what's trying to achieve.
The 2019 resolution. I agree.
I don't think it's that clear.
No, that's right.
And so that'll probably be some help right through this. If you go back and read the minutes of that meeting in 2019, which I attached a link to, you will see what was happening at the time, where it appeared that a councillor who was the chair of ARED at the time wanted complete control over the development of that reserve, and the council was basically saying, no, we'll consult with you, but we're in control. There'd also been a working party set up at one stage, which had sort of run away with the concept as well. And so this was council actually just bringing it all back in and saying, no, we're going to retain control, but I don't think they put it as clearly or as bluntly as they might have. But that's the situation. Now, council may consider what's the appropriate situation to go forward with, and that's fine. I'm open to hear that, but we're not. Well, it's my view that we're not going to resolve that right here, right now.
Yeah. And I guess if I can just come back to Vanessa's comments, that what I think I've heard from you, Vanessa, is that some of the wording here, but actually we're not looking to change that wording, we're trying to improve that wording till we get a better outcome.
Yes, totally, and I'm well aware this is not a decision item, but I'm providing feedback for direction.
Correct. Yeah, that's good. Sorry, just while I think about it, can I just Graham, I've just noticed on page 51, it says please go to 26th of September 2029, confirm minutes.
Yeah, it should be 2019.
Yeah, so we're just a wee bit ahead of ourselves now. We're so forward thinking. Yeah. Sorry.
With interest.
Yeah, when I saw that, I thought I just needed to, well, I remind. So you had your hand up, I think, Fiona, and then Pauline. So we're just trying to gather some feedback to actually maybe not necessarily make a decision, but actually to formulate a plan to take perhaps the next meeting or whatever. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And while you may be directing for input from Southwood, actually I think it's a process. So when we're doing a development or something like this, it would apply to any development potentially across the district. When you're developing, then there's managing, then there's a whole host of things. So I think it's probably worthwhile to have another look at it. But I do recall it was a very messy process, and so we need to come up with something that enables it to go forward without chopping and changing. People come into communities, people leave communities, and this is a long-term project. So once it gets on that journey, it needs to have a system that enables it to stay there so that it can be progressed the same as if it was in Hanmer or Cheviot or anywhere else.
100%. And the one thing we all want from this is clarity, that actually allow the project to continue with purpose, because the resolution in many ways is actually holding it back. It's been holding the project back for a wee while. So we just need to get some clarity and understand who's governing, who's making decisions, who's managing, and who's making it. Pauline.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I've reflected on this a lot actually, and I guess my first point would be that I think that this paper as it is needs to go to Southwood Committee as soon as possible for their information, just so that there is a full understanding of the fact that we have been presented with decision making that actually we didn't have delegation for. And on reflection, I've reflected on the local input, because for me that's kind of key to us getting an outcome in the long term that's suitable for our community. And on reflecting on that, the Reserves Management Plan review was actually really instrumental for me as a Southwood councillor in actually getting that local input and giving me the clarity of thinking from all aspects of the South Ward, what actually is wanted there. And so in thinking about what the governance might look like moving forward, I guess my feedback is, how do we harness that? And I don't know that that's solely the Reserve Advisory Group, is it? Maybe it's a combination, but that was my reflection, is actually that process was really, really just gave me clarity about what we were looking for in our district at this point in time. Clarity that I hadn't got through the process up to now.
But an outcome from today's discussion is this paper or something similar to go to South Ward, so that.
I think as it is,
Your understanding.
yeah, with that explanation that Hamish has given in regards to us being presented with resolutions and work to approve that, Southwood didn't have the delegation to approve.
So any other comments? I'm going to go to Robbie and then Gary. Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple. This one is, I look at this one completely differently to any of the reserves and the benches and Beathfield or Seadown Crescent or anything like that, the little, what I'd call local reserves. I'd expect people around, you know, the local area to have far more input. This one here really is a Southwood reserve, so I think it's got to be treated a little bit differently. I do think that Southwood has to be fitted in there somehow. I mean, we have a process even to name a street. It'll come from the bottom, it'll go through Southwood and council have to tick it off. Maybe something like that, but Southwood's got to have, you know, I believe it's got to go through Southwood there somewhere. The other thing was that Southwood made a decision, which it sounds like maybe didn't have delegation to do, for a good reason. They chose to change the name because there's a fair bit of baggage goes with Amberley Eastern Reserve, and there was a real willingness to draw a line. Everyone was in a good place at the time and wanting to move on with a fresh slate. So whether that comes into play, it sounds like council would have to make that decision now or whatever. But I think Southwood's got to be in there. If you take Southwood out of it, what it's done in the past is leaves the reserve group with the spotlight, the unwanted spotlight on is, why aren't you guys doing anything? Which is not the right way. They're there to feed in, to me, they're there to feed into the Southwood probably defines, and then in this case perhaps feeds on up and council says yes or no. And that's kind of how I see it working.
So would you support the idea of Southwood actually having this paper to have a wee look at it, and then the likelihood if we don't get to, whilst this isn't a decision making, it'll come back and we can't, my mind, we can't meander on actually getting a governance position. We need to actually be pretty slick in our thinking, and I don't know whether we're even too far away from it today, notwithstanding the fact that the Southwood need to be involved, you know, but it feels to me as if there's certainty about what some of the concerns of these original amendments, which officers have been directed to provide guidance, but that's in effect the thing that's tripped us up. So we need to simplify it so we can actually get on and action some of the work. And without that, we're still tripping on top of each other. Robbie, I'll just let you finish and then I'll go again.
Me personally here, I would progress from here would probably be something similar to how the pool was done, is that it's been traversed so many times and chewed over, and when everyone gets in the same room, that they unexpectedly find that they're usually singing a fairly similar song. There's a fairly clear plan emerged. Somehow we're getting down to some kind of a committee or group that can get on and actually make, you know, get the shovel in the ground. That's where I go, rather than more.
Yeah, I think that's where we're heading, simplified process. Oh, sorry.
Oh, Gary, excuse me.
Yeah, okay. Gary.
I haven't got a resolution, but I'll try and describe as briefly as I can, Madam Mayor. A pathway maybe, if that makes sense, and somehow we can knock into a resolution. The history is that this is the resolution back from 2019 because of issues that were going on there. And this is what stands in place today. Have I got that right? That's what's in place today, and it has no reference to the South Ward Committee. We're about to start making progress. In some ways we have, you know, there's already bore down and whatever. We've got $1 million or whatever the numbers are in the development contribution. That is public money. The whole driving influence behind the Eastern Reserve is for the community of Amberley and the public input, and picking up on Councillor White's point, that's what we got, overwhelming feedback and engagement out of both the LTP and the Reserve Management Plan process. So where I'm at the moment is the reserves group with Reserve Advisory Group, with absolute total respect from my part, Robbie, does not represent the community at large. The South Ward itself is not a community at large body. That's why we voted in agreement as council to move to a community board. My personal view is the way forward is to hold on to this resolution, maybe with a modification which adds the word South Ward in there. The council retains direct control of the reserve development and works with, or whatever the words are, with the Reserve Advisory Group and the South Ward for implementation. But implementation sits still with council, because I don't believe we're at a point where we can overturn the 2019 resolution, because I don't think the South Ward Committee itself personally is structured ready for that level of community responsibility. And I would retain this in place until the community board aim to get the initial planning and development underway in the Eastern Reserve in the next 12 months. But then in the ongoing continued development of the Eastern Reserve and with the appointment subject to appeal of the community board, we may then, in a Hanmer Springs model, hand greater responsibility to the community board once it is in place. In the meantime, we should retain control, which is effectively this resolution, but I would just make reference to the South Ward Committee alongside ARAG as being people who we will take involvement from, but the decision sits here for the next 12 months. Sorry, it took longer than I thought, but.
Yeah, you're gathering up everybody's thoughts under a sentence. Do you want to add something like?
Yeah, just a couple of points. Number one, to Robbie's point about council getting on and getting stuff done, that's the job of officers. First direction, we'll do it.
Yeah.
That's fine. We just need to know who's giving direction and have that very clear, because we're getting directions from all over the place. Right.
And that's why we need to make.
Number two, as a matter of course, when we're doing something in the community, we consult with that community committee, but we just need to be very clear that we are consulting, because this is a resolution of council. And you know, community committee sometimes, you know, have bright ideas like we'll rename it or whatever, and they pass a resolution, but they don't actually have delegation, but that's not made clear at the time. So we just need to be clear about this delegation.
Through the chair, just look, I'm speaking 100% support of Gary's comments. I would even go so far as to consider, rather than naming the communities to the groups, you could even just sort of change it or put in the word local community rather than South Ward anyway. But further to Hamish's comments that he's receiving, or officers are receiving direct instructions and directions from all over the place. Do we need to start looking as to whether management should be questioned as well? I mean, is this something that needs to go back to ARAG for them to fine tune their operations with regards to management, or, you know, to take on another reserve, is this too big a job?
So the management is not delegated to an advisory group in any of our reserves. They're an advisory group that provide advice and useful advice, and they say if this was to be managed this way, this is what we bring to the party, etc., etc. So they're not actually the managers of the reserves as such. They're the people that yes, they do work on the reserves, but they're not the managers of the reserves.
So in response to that, then therefore, and the resolution that says to provide local input in the development and management of the reserve, so that.
As I said, the wording of this is not particularly clear.
Yeah. So I guess what we're trying to gain from this is that at that time, the wording that was structured in there has made it a little bit muddly to actually get a pathway of who's directing to who's. What is the desirable outcome? What we're trying to improve is perhaps a change in how it's written and who's the reporting focus, you know, because I think this, what we've understood from here is that this is a little bit muddly. Pauline, did you have a hand?
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Madam Mayor. It's just really point of clarity, actually, because we've had some suggestions of wording changes, whatnot. It's a resolution that has been made. So I wonder, please, Hamish, if you can just elaborate a bit as to the process. So would it be a formal revocation? Because it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we can't just pop on in and adjust a resolution.
So you correctly, you can't just adjust a resolution, you pass a resolution. And you know, I presented this paper for information, and my recommendation is that you receive the information. I think the conversation that we're having now points to something that we may wish to do moving forward, and if that's the case, we'll present a paper that that would present a different set of governance arrangements. Council can make its own governance arrangements, because this is you delegating or not delegating to officers or to committees or whatever. So it's anything that you do is not going to directly counter this. So it's not a formal revocation. It's just a new resolution that says we've chosen to make a different arrangement for our governance arrangements than that were previously made in 2019. So it's not directly running counter to this.
That's really helpful, just to understand that we don't need to go through that revocation process.
So I'm just wondering from today's discussion, and do you want me to receive your information first and then I'll try and.
Yeah, just very quick, I've just got to me, there's two streams of work to be done here. And I don't want to see, you know, going through the reserves management thing and that, we waited for that process, it cost a year. I don't want to see us getting held up in the governance discussion around which group that group, if a board is set up, whatever. And then we're finding out that Graham's minutes of 2029 actually turned out to be correct. Is at the moment, we've got a map 4, I think, being out of all the feedback that's coming so far. A map 4 has been produced, which pretty well summed up what everyone was asking. I'd kind of want the assurance that council officers and that progress is going on now while we're deciding about governance and that sort of thing. The operational side of it, that things on the ground. I don't want to go back for anybody and say, oh, we're going to wait another year for this, that, and the other. We just can't do that.
I think we've got two things happening here. We've got yet to be completed, and I think it's coming back to October, the reserve management plan, and that's what you're making reference to now. So I think that work is happening, it continues to happen, and that will come back to our October, and that's the mapping that you've talked about and the feedback to the community and all of those other things. So I think that continues to happen here. What has been identified is actually who is going to have governance over the Eastern Reserve or the Village Green, you know, whatever it should be named. And I think the discussion that I'm hearing from everybody, this is a information paper, but what I'm hearing is that perhaps what we could come from this discussion is that we direct officers to bring back a further paper on governance options, other than, you know, this is our background, that we ask officers to bring a further paper to provide further options on governance for the Eastern Reserve, and that will give options that we might prefer, that might be inclusive of South Board or governance or council or a configuration of both, and we can debate that when we get that paper. It feels like that's what I'm hearing from everybody. That takes in, Gary, your point and support that, you know, that this paper here, as we've seen it, gives us the history, but actually what we're looking for is a further paper. We'll come to our next meeting, maybe not next meeting, but as soon as possible, and with some options around governance. And I think that's the discussion that I've heard today.
That I understand that, but my question really is will that hold up the officers getting on with agreed infrastructure now?
There's an existing governance structure in place, and there's an existing reserve management plan in place. Whatever the future reserve management plan looks like, the priority in the reserve management plan is still the same, which is to build the ground they took it on. And so that just carries on.
Okay, so we've still got a dotted line working along here, but this is going to give, we're going to ask officers to present a paper to give options for governance that will give clarity around who or whom might be in that, have that delegations. Okay, does that make sense? But still, all the way happening here, we've got the reserve management plan still, you know, coming back to us in October, I think it is. Yeah.
To move this along, I'd like to move that this information be received, and I'd further like to move that officers report on, as we've been discussing, on future governance and some proposals based on the discussion we've had today.
Okay, so have you got that in some sort of fine shape, Grant? I thought you would. Thank you. Are you happy to second that?
I was going to propose exactly the same.
Okay, so we're receiving this information and we've got, we're asking officers to bring back further paper around that. I think you've all got clarity to that. Are you happy to take that to the vote? If that being the case, all in agreement to that, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, that motion is carried. Thank you. Great, thanks very much, everybody. That was helpful, and it feels as if we're progressing along for the Eastern Reserve / Village Green. Hamish, your second paper here, information around local water done well. If I can ask you to speak to that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yep. This is an information paper, but it's a really important paper because this is about us building a common understanding of the government's local water done well program and how we're moving forward with that. So the paper basically presents the background of the government's Three Waters Reform Program, what the key components of the program are, and the project that we're jointly working on with our friends at Kaikoura and Waimakariri District Councils in response to the government's reform program. So as you all know, local water done well is the coalition government's Three Waters Reform Program. It's got three main components. Number one, the repeal of the much loved entity model proposed by the previous government. The passage of legislation requiring water service providers to prepare a water service delivery plan, either jointly or individually. And then the third part of it, legislation that sets out the regulatory scheme, including economic regulation. And that part hasn't been drafted yet, or we haven't seen a draft yet, but it's expected to be introduced to the House late 2024. And the government's driver in this is really in line with broader infrastructure and housing development policies. Coalition government's approach mirrors that promulgated by C4LD, and as you know, this council was a member of C4LD along with both Waimakariri and Kaikoura. So this is what we asked for, and it's now being delivered to us, and it's up to us to respond to that. The water service delivery plans haven't been fully enacted yet, but I'm expecting the final reading of this very shortly. And they require us to develop a water service delivery plan within 1 year of the bill being enacted. So it's a pretty short period of time. The water service delivery plan, I'm not going to go through line by line what's required, but it's largely an information document showing how water services will be delivered in the district and how the pricing of those water services will work. And the government just added another bit, which is saying actually you have to provide an action plan as well, showing that you're going to actually implement the plan. So you're not just going to produce a plan and sit it on a bit of paper, you're actually going to implement it. So the future regulatory environment will rely on drinking water standards as it does now. So Taumata Arawai promulgate drinking water standards that have to be met. There are environmental standards, and they're currently sitting under each regional or unitary council. But the government has said that we're going to standardise those things. So standardise for a discharge consent, etc. And Dan and I had an interesting talk with Taumata Arawai last week, Dan, about how that might work. But essentially, the government standards for, say, wastewater discharge to a body of fresh water will be standardised right across the country, and the regional council unitary couldn't put higher standard in place. So, and that's quite interesting, because what it allows for then is a standardised design for a wastewater treatment plant, which hopefully would lower the costs, etc. So, and then the final aspect, and this is probably an aspect that's not well understood, or probably hasn't had a lot of airtime in the local government sector, but this is the regulatory regime that provides economic regulation. The Commerce Commission will be the economic regulator, and there's a variety of ways that the Commerce Commission provides economic regulation across things like the electricity sector, airports, etc. But with a utility that's used directly by the public, much like electricity, we could possibly expect that the Commerce Commission will look at price quality regulation. So the Commerce Commission will say you have to set a price that recovers your costs, including depreciation, etc. So they'll say the minimum amount you can charge is this amount. And they may also prescribe a maximum amount, because obviously, you know, your profit should only be what you need to reinvest in the service that you provide. So there will be very strict regulation. It's a very heavy-handed regulation, and it is expensive and time-consuming. So that's where we think it's going to go. At the moment, they're saying, oh, we're quite light, it'll be reporting only, which is similar to, say, airports at the moment, where the Commerce Commission doesn't set the pricing. But because of the direct impact on households, it's likely that they'll move quite quickly to quite a heavy-handed regulation, like we see with electricity, for example. So, in the local government sector, we have very little exposure to the work the Commerce Commission does, and probably a low level of understanding of how these things work. We're currently jointly the three councils commissioning work to provide a better explanation of how that might roll out for local government from the experts in that field. So we can look forward to seeing that at some stage. So, on the 8th of August, we announced publicly that we're working together to investigate whether to submit a joint water service delivery plan, and that's what we're still doing. We have an open mind as to whether working jointly or working individually is the best way for the future. If we are working jointly, what form is that joint work going to take? And that will have to be a decision of this council and our neighbouring councils as well. So we're all going to have to make those decisions as individual councils as to what form that's going to take and how that's going to work. The government, I think, has expressed a very clear preference for the CCO model, and they've done that not by mandating that that's the model that will be used, but by providing and brokering direct advantages for the CCO model over other types of models such as shared services or trusts. So that's a hint from the government as to where they'd like to see this go. So at the moment, we're working through the financial modelling. Castalia is doing that work on our behalf. and asset and service level work stream, that will commence once the bill is finalised. And then the governance design options, it's about to commence that bit of work. So we're working along through it, and so really this paper is just providing a background to say expect more papers coming about the financial model, the governance, potential structures, etc., because by about February, we're going to need to be in a position to make a decision on what our model is going forward so that we can have our water service delivery plan developed and submitted. You get two goes at the water service delivery plan. So you develop it, you submit it. If it gets rejected, you get another go. If you don't get it across the line the second time, then you basically lose control. So this is an absolute key bit of work for the next 12 months or so. And you will find quite quickly that you have some key decisions to make. So I guess I urge all of you to follow the announcements from the government, to read a bit about the bills as they come through, so that you have a good understanding, which will help your personal background for this decision-making process. I will be trying to provide you with information so that you have that understanding. So that's really what this is about. We're going to have a bit of a workshop on this later today, but I'm happy to take any questions about this. My recommendation is that you receive this information, but clarification.
Thank you, Hamish, for that.
And noting that's a lot of things I don't know about this because bills haven't been passed.
Exactly, that's right. Okay, look, I think you know, you've given good history, really good information in this paper to keep us abreast of the significant changes, but is there any questions? Sorry, Gary.
I have no questions with the detail at all here, Murray, but from just sort of a wider context and going back to LGN said last week, from your discussions with other mayors and councillors and councils, given the progress that we've made here and the position that we're at down this pathway, what's your feeling of where we're at relative to others? Are we further ahead? Are we playing catch up? Where are we? Just an overview.
Yeah, we are well ahead of the game. We are, I guess, leading in many respects. The formation of the change in the legislation and the change of the impact of delivery around local water done well. So I feel incredibly confident that we are in a very good position. Other mayors that I've spoken to that haven't had the opportunity, I guess, that we have had, and I guess that frame, from my perspective, is based on our collegiality with our neighbours and the and my belief, or perhaps a belief of yours as well, that actually from our constituents' perspective, the North Canterbury frame is like a hand in a glove, you know. Other mayors are still sort of considering who their best neighbourly position might be, you know, and so there's some of those discussions about where do we naturally fit and how that might work for them or their district. So I think we're well poised to meet the deadlines of that 12 months, you know, and we have talked about when is the right time to consult once we know what the legislation is, you know, consulting with our community, and our preference amongst both councils will be early in the new year, because we all know that coming out to consult in December or January in our district is neither use nor ornament. So, you know, looking to do that as best we can, which would still give us that 12-month insight to meet our deadline. So I feel very confident. I think we all should feel very confident that we're well poised to manage this process. But we need to keep an eye on the game as well. Yeah, thank you. Robbie and then Tom, thank you.
Just a question, I might be checking on here. Each council has to come up with a water service delivery plan. If you do end up with a CCO with 3 councils combined, does that CCO then have to work to 3 different plans, Or is there any scope where the three councils can have a water plan for the whole three and any sort of economies, savings, anything there?
Yeah, thank you.
So the water service delivery plan is the plan for the council as to how it sees water's delivered in the future. And if we were to form a single water service delivery plan across the three councils, that's fine. Our own water service delivery plan, or we could form a water service delivery plan for drinking water across the three councils with sewer and stormwater considered separately. There's a multitude of ways this can be stacked up. So don't jump immediately to the CCO, because we're not jumping to a CCO. What we're doing is we're looking and saying what option is going to work best across the three districts, assuming that we can agree an option. So, yeah, you know, so you'll have an opportunity to assess those options, but notwithstanding the governance structure, is there a way that we can jointly deliver a water service delivery plan? So there's a number of strings to this bow, but ideally, three councils, one water service delivery plan sounds like a good idea. And so that's sort of where we'll be looking, but there may be a variety of reasons why you know, there needs to be multiple water service delivery plans, including, I mean, it could be, you know, 9 water service delivery plans, one for each of the waters for each of the councils. So, or it could be one water service delivery plan, which is all 3 waters across all 3 councils. So, you know, we haven't, what we've agreed is that we'll work together until we find a stumbling block that we can't get over. So we're aiming for that single water service delivery plan, but if we get to a stumbling block we can't get over, then we'll start breaking it down from there.
Thanks, Robbie. Tom, I think you.
Yeah, 3 quick points. Under paragraph 9, it says that the coalition government has directed councils that any unspent money should be applied to the present exercise.
Yep.
Any unspent money?
Yep, we've got transition funding, which carried on into this year, and so we're applying the transition funding to this.
Okay. It also says that each contributing council does not expect to have to contribute ratepayer funding. But we are contributing your time, officers' time, so that will be contributed to by our ratepayers, won't it?
Indirectly, yes.
Yeah. And probably early at this stage, have we any thoughts on our staff, whether they will remain in our employment or whether they will be employed by another body, the CCO or whatever it may be?
Tell me what the governance structure is, and I'll tell you who the employer will be. There's chicken and egg stuff here.
Because that will impact upon our ratepayer costs. But if our staff are transferred to that new body, then presumably with the savings on staff, we will be able to reduce our rates.
Definitely, if you were to shift the water out to a separate invoicing, then there definitely has to be a reduction in rates that's proportionate to that. Because the money only comes out of one pocket. And it doesn't matter whether it's a ratepayer or taxpayer, it still all comes out of the same pocket. It doesn't matter whether it's the CCO or the council, it still comes out of one pocket. And so, yeah, the other issue that you will have to deal with if, and it's a big if, but if water services were to move to a different body than the council, is you'll have a stranded overhead, and the back office functions of the council will need to be the right size for the organisation, you know, for the future organisation.
But equally, if the 3 authorities combined, there could be cost-effective savings by being more efficient and having a smaller or a concentrated team.
Correct, but it would be a shame to miss the opportunity to get the overheads to the right size on the basis that, you know, that efficiency should end up in the ratepayer's pocket.
Yes.
not pay for an inefficiency somewhere else.
But may result in redundancies as well.
Well, there's different ways of reorganising things, and that will depend on the priorities that you set if we go down that track.
Thank you, Tom. I mean, it just shows the importance of the information that you're seeking today through this paper is what, that we need to keep oversight over this over the next 12 months, really. It's critical to us as an organisation for some of the things you've raised, but actually critical, more importantly, is to our ratepayers as well. So, we need to be keeping abreast of the changes as we become aware of them, to be fair. Yeah. Is there any other question? Oh, sorry, Fiona. Yeah.
And I'm also aware that some of the legislation's still got to be passed through, which will make some changes as well. There will be some very interesting times, and I think when they say what's got to be passed in within 12 months, when they get all the bits and pieces, we've got to course them. So it will be really, really important, because of course some of that will be coming through, and next year will be an election year, there'll be new people coming on and they'll have to get up to speed, all of those sorts of things. So it'll be testing times, so we all need to play our part to stay up to date. But I was just going to move that the information be received.
I'll just check to see what.
Just as far as the timing goes, it's my expectation that the bill will receive royal assent this week.
Yeah.
And so the 365 days start. So
That's right.
it will be before the election. You might be in the throes of electioneering, but before the election, this has to be done and dusted.
I really think, Madam Mayor, fine timing.
Well, I guess that's also another debate around a 3-year or 4-year term, but inevitably there's always going to be, our workload it's always busy. So, you're always going to get that point of building up to or post-election time, and we'll just manage that as best we can. But you were quite happy
to
to.
move that the information be received if we're going to have further workshops on this.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just a very quick question supplementary to that. So the decision to proceed or not to proceed will be taken by this council, not by the ratepayers, not by our electorate. It will be made at this table.
It will be made at this table, but some of it depends on the legislation, because at the moment, water is a key asset. The 3 waters are in their totality are a key asset for this council. And to do anything to invest yourself on those 3 waters, you have to go through a special consultative procedure. Now, the government has talked about changing the consultation process for the CCO to make it easier to form a CCO than what the current legislation allows. So whatever happens, we're going to have to consult with the community on this. This is actually, their asset, and you're making a decision on their behalf. So, they've expressed views previously about local control of those assets and what local control means. So, we will be consulting with the community, and we will be making the decision.
So that's looking to be about February next year, give and take some timeframes. Yeah. Okay, so we have a mover to receive that information. Tom, will you happy to second that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, if there's no further question, all agreement to that, please say aye.
Aye.
That's carried. Thank you. Thank you for that report. Hamish and Jason, that brings us to your financial report. If we can just work through that, being 12-month calendar, so yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the report's done in the same format we've always done it. The first bit being the financial report, and the phrase form over substance is applicable because we're only a month into the financial year. There's a few qualifications overall qualifications. We haven't allowed for the carry forward projects that we've just allowed for, and also we haven't adequately done a full calendarisation of the budget currently. So what you're seeing is very much a pure snapshot for the month. But there will be various variances there that are purely timing variances, that, you know, whether they occur in July or at 12th, if it occurs in July rather than we'll be able to analyse that as we go through. I suppose that I'm more than happy to go through the report that I just wanted that qualification well ahead of time. So page 59, overall, the operating surplus, operating revenue, about $200,000 more than what we had budgeted for the first month, and our operating expenditure is about $300,000 lower. We've got some of their capital expenditure appears to be over budget at this stage, but again, full calendarisation process is still to be undertaken, particularly with the capital. So I'm going to flick through the rest of it very rapidly. If there are any queries, just please sing out. Page 60 is the water supplies. Again, one of the key variances there is just the operating expenditures when particular groups and accounts are going to be spent, particularly over compliance testing and pipe maintenance. And then there's been some capital treatment of just ahead of what we had budgeted for, but again, that is still to be calendarised appropriately. And some of that treatment of water is that line item where we spent $192,000 in July was one of those projects that we have carried forward. So no budget assigned to it. Page 61 is we retain this a separate page on the NTU stimulus package 3 waters. This is where some additional transition money has actually been received, and money is carried forward from the previous year that will assist in doing the local water done well planning. Okay, page 62 is sewer, and again, there's a couple of those projects, one key project in sewer that has been carried forward, and there's a bit of the operating expenditure that is very much timing variances for July. And very similarly with page 63, the stormwater, the variance sits around the hours that are applied from our utility maintenance staff to stormwater. Hasn't been exactly 12th of the annual budget. Page 64 is broken into 1,000 and broken down 65 being roading. A lot of that is completely dictated by the calendarisation and for footpaths or roadsides. There has not been any expenditure of note for the first month. And again, similarly with page 67 being coastal hazards, there no expenditure has been incurred. There will be some expenditure against the Amberley Beach forcible protection that we had forecast to be spent by the end of June, but has not, so that will carry forward, but it was a project. Now that I'm saying it's not on that list that I provided earlier, so I'll rectify that. Page 68 is public services as a whole, and then that's broken down into various areas. So we've got page 69, community services, and this is where, and we've had this consistently for the previous year, a lot of funding that relates to the community partnerships team had straddles the financial year, so there was funds that we had recognised in the previous year, but there is more funds that flow through into this year, and so you will always see a variance there in the other income where we appear to receiving more than what we had budgeted for, but that's recognising the fact that a chunk of that money was received in the previous year just moves over into this one. Property on page 70, again, the key variance there is just the capital expenditure against Salty's block. That was continuing, but now that we've got that with apparently no budget against it, but that's obviously an amount that's been carried forward, and that will populate the budget. Page 71 relates to reserves, and there is a range of timing variances in respect to maintenance works relating to the reserves. Page 72 is civil defence, and for the year to date there's been no significant variances. Similarly with the library on page 70.
It's through the chair. Jason, on page 73, in terms of the library, and I'm trying to retain from a governance viewpoint as opposed to getting into the detail, but traditionally the library has run as a break-even model. And we've taken some pride in that and looked at that at least over the last 2 years that I'm recalling. Suddenly here we are a year in, and it's already, we were budgeting to lose, operationally to be in a deficit situation of 25,000. It's now 35, and the staff salaries, employment costs are one of the drivers of that. Is that an area which, as council, I don't want to get into it as governance, but as council officers, are we taking a hard look at, our library operations and getting them to run to budget, or are we facing a potential blowout through the year? I'm sorry to be direct, but
I don't believe so. What we'll need to do is just drill down because the issue we do have with the libraries is that particularly in Cheviot and Hammer Springs, that there is an office component to that, and just making sure we've got that appropriate.
Okay, so there may be some adjustments. Okay,
that's correct. The other item there is that causing a component of the variance in July is the amount of development contributions that we've received. So obviously, with the new long-term plan, we have allowed for the expansion of the library in year 10 and collecting contributions consistently over the next 10 years, actually longer, to help fund that. So to date, we have not received any contributions.
Would development contribution revenue be for operational expense? Wouldn't that be more for capital?
No, it's not, but it's still operating revenue, so it has to be accounted for as operating.
Yeah, I know. There is.
Sorry to be present.
And page 74 is waste minimisation. Again, it's hard to really judge for the first month. We have recorded a lower level of refuse collection bag sales for the month, but I think last year we actually pretty much met our budget for the first time in many years for refuse collection bags. So obviously there wasn't a long purchased in July.
The good news is there though that the whole waste minimisation, waste cost centre and whatever, like it did last year, continues to break even. Shows small. We kicked off well there again.
Okay, page 75 is regulatory services, and it's broken down to resource management and planning on 76, variance there and use of consultants in legal and policy development in July, but there has been it's identified has been a bit spent in August, so there was savings, very record savings we made in July. Page 77, it's compliance and regulatory functions and generally largely on budget for the month. The thermal pools for July, a surplus was recorded of 7,000 for the pools, as opposed to a budgeted surplus of 188,000. Just it's a negative variance there. I don't have a, sorry, Robbie.
Presumably that might come up in an update later on, because I note that that's actually during the school holidays period too.
Yeah, look, I don't have an identifiable reason for that, maybe growing more.
But it's important, it's only a single month, we all know. But we know times are tough and we know the economy's struggling, and suddenly in our business venture, for the first month of our new financial year, we're $181,000 behind budget. We should have come in with a profit, a net surplus as part of our 2.8 or 2.9 million for the full year, which is in the LTP. We should have come in at an overall surplus of 87. We're actually 93 underneath, under. So I just think it's if we were sitting there looking at this as a piece of business, we'd be saying what's happening and what we need to be doing, or how's this month trending. I mean, we're 2 days from month's end. Are we seeing any recovery of this, or is the same pattern continuing? Don't know, but I'm just again from an overview raising the point coming off the numbers.
Okay, page 79 is governance and corporate. It's broken down to governance on page 80. Variance so far, treasury, obviously variances in income received and the calculation of interest. Corporate on page 82. There.
Can I just stop with
Oh,
yeah, Robbie, if you're
sorry,
gonna be-
Sorry, I was just a point on page 81. So we plus and minus, isn't it? So we've got rates, penalties are over budget by 43. You think, yeah, great. But the downside of that is that says that more people are owing the rates. That's not money in the bank, is it, in effect?
No, but again, we do invoice it, we do apply it, but those penalties are applied at the end on arrears at the end of June, so we do apply it. We do go, and unless there is a request to remit the rates, they will retain as a remit penalty, so they will be recognised as income. But you're right, we have not received that, and that flows through to the rate arrears.
Would it be fair to say that if the rates penalties is up and the rates collected is down?
Yeah. But yeah, we review that as part of the rate arrears. Corporate on page 82, there is a constant reassessment done on the employment costs, making sure that we're allocating the costs from the wage corporate cost centres appropriately. So, but overall, you can see wages for the full month back on page 59 is largely on budget. 14,000 variance over a budget or budget of 1.17 million. about 1% is. Page 83, just the continuation of the earthquake recovery activity and just where it is placed at the moment. The bulk of the cost relating to the interest cost on the debt, but also within direct expenditure and also other income relates to the village in Waiau that was initially funded by earthquake recovery money. So the surplus that's derived from the rentals of those is used to offset.
And we predicted to have that completely gone down and gone by the end of this LTP, or?
I've got a feeling it's year 6 or
Year
7.
6, yeah, okay.
So, and that is, close to what was predicted.
Yeah.
Initially, structured.
Yeah. Yes. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, and page 84 to 87, for what it's worth is where we're currently sitting for the capital expenditure for the month. But again, what will fold into that will be those projects that we carry forward and will better reflect the result.
Thanks, Jason.
Page, the next section is the rate arrears report, and it's 88 at the end of July. The balance of rates owing was 10.3 million, and at the same point at this time last year, the balance was 9.3 million, but that overall increase between the two is 10.6%, and which is our overall rates increase was 10.98%. So it goes in concert. But always at the and particularly at the end of July, that will be the peak of the rates owing. There'll be people that will pay their rates ahead of pay all their years worth of rates in installment, and then so it'll certainly come down significantly from there, and that graph is pretty consistent on page 89, particularly the total rates owing is high there, and then high there.
Cool, thank you.
So we'll have a better handle on that at the end of August, and then again at the end of September.
Oh, sorry, I'm pulling.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that, thank you for the explanation, but it is almost 400 more ratepayers who are owing in comparison to last year, which, given the number of ratepayers in our area, is a substantial percentage.
Yeah, no, I'd be tempted to wait to see to August, the end of August, to see how it's actually tracking.
Oh, just out of interest, have we had any increase in people, not rates rebates, asking for assistance for plans? Have we had any more uptake on that side?
Certainly, rates rebate, they've been steaming in requests for those. I can't tell you exactly how many people we got on payment plans, but we prefer people to come and discuss it with us, because then we can develop plans, and as long as they keep to the plans, we can remit the penalties that are owing. Always prepared to do that, because getting the core amount of rates in is the absolute key. people are ignoring the rates demands is not helpful to anybody. And if we don't know, we just pile on the penalties, and it can get up to a unmanageable level. But to give you some full stats, I can't do that quite now, but I can certainly get my team to do that.
Thank you. Thanks, Robbie. Yeah.
Just to pass a comment, I guess, since we were talking about rates, and I know I was in the office on a day really early on when the rates had gone out and that type of thing, and just a lot of the inquiries and things that staff are dealing with, some upset, some and the way they cope with all of that, because we set them, but it's the front line down there, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that and the work that they do, and just how helpful they are there to help people to manage it. It's just a comment, really.
Right. Yeah, the next component is the Treasury report, and it's on page 91 and 92. We do have and I'll a couple of questions from our policy for the month, principally the one around the liquidity ratio, and that was nearly a timing variance. Our creditor run on the 20th of July was just slightly more than I had anticipated, so I needed to draw down from our flexible facility we have with Westpac, but it did mean that at the end of July, our liquidity ratio was only 105.79% rather than 100 as required by the our policy. When rates were received on the 20th, that resolved itself straight away, so we won't be in that position at the end of August. And we are just moving through and getting the anticipated new tranches of debt to meet our capital programs. And the other area where we are in breach of our policy is, again, it's very, very minor in respect to our interest rate risk profile. There's just a period in the years 0 to 2 where we haven't got sufficient cover according to our policy. And again, that has been rectified on Friday by entering into another interest rate swap to make sure that we're within our objective is to be somewhere within those minimum and maximum policy limits. The other component there is on page 92 that our average weighted cost of funds, including the margin, set at 5.17%. At the end of June, that was 5.25%. So that's recognising that the interest rates are coming down, or had been factored to come down, and then just refer back to my covering report, page 57. Just discussion around the official cash rate that was reduced by the governor of the Reserve Bank on the 14th of August. From the 5.5 it had been for some time, down to 5.25, and there was almost an immediate drop to the 90-day bank bill rate as a result. So that all sort of helps give some confidence that the rates are coming down, and as we had allowed for to a degree in our and last thing, just page 97 101 just provides that internal review for the organisation. presentation and I rapidly go to page 99, which has the key issues around our internal debt being the thermal coals and the Three Waters. So the thermal coals debt at the end of July was 15.8 million. At this stage, the water debt sat at 42 million. Sewer debt sat at 10.4 million, and overall, the stormwater debt, which will be folded into one line, sat at 3.6 million. That relates to the purchase of Standard Road property, and there's a component that will be carved out and on site, which will reduce the amount sitting in there. And I suppose the final page on 101, which was point of view of the earthquake recovery debt set at 1.924 million at the end.
Yeah, it's a lot of it. You know, when we consider how far down the track we are with that earthquake debt, and I was talking with Riet from Gisborne, you know, over the last week about their cost of recovery to their district post Cyclone Gabrielle, you know, and it's a lot of residual debt that actually sits with our ratepayers up and down the country, you know, it's, yeah, it's significant. Sorry, did you have your hand up there?
Chair, Jason, page 97. What is the money for the Hamner Springs Tourism Fund? What goes with that?
Right, that is it's a special fund that ring fence for Hamner Springs, but it's derived from a portion of the bungee jump royalties from the ferry bridge. So 60% of the royalties, because we get paid a set amount per jump. It goes into a fund for the preservation of the bridge,
Right.
and the other 40% is for a tourism fund for the benefit of Hamner Springs. So
Are there any parameters around that spend?
there is an agreement that between the council and the operators of the bungee jump operation, but generally it provides a fund to do tourism projects for Hamner Springs. So the LTP budget has allowed for, I think, a level of signage in particular coming into Hamner Springs, and but in the past that fund, there was a portion of that fund that was used for the tourism board when we're deep in COVID. So there was recognition that tourism going to slow down. We need to create provide the tourism board with some additional funding to be able to.
I think it was a resource consent condition placed when the operation started, is that correct?
Before my time.
Yeah, well, I must have heard that somewhere, so correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I may be wrong in saying that, but. Are you happy with that? Yeah, okay, thanks, Jason.
Okay, that's
Thank you. Okay, so you have outlined the two bridge. Yeah.
Bridges of the policy.
Yeah, thank you. And so we understand that, and we understand that, you know, there is some going to be managed by August, so that's cool. So with that, we just looking to receive the information and approve the policy breaches as outlined in the dashboard. Do I have support? Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Gary. That we move and second that, all in agreement with that, please say aye. Those against, that's carried. Thank you, thanks Jason, thank you very much. We have a little bit of more time that we will get through some further reports before we break for lunch, but we've got the Lagoima request. We've all become very familiar with these, Graham, now, but sure we could take it as read, but perhaps if you just want to have a chat about it and see if there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, there is, I don't think I've got any further updates. It's one that's still in progress. Hasn't been completed yet. There were a couple of, those first two, we did withhold a little bit of information from the first one on the ground that is the public excluded minutes of the community committee, so they'll be released. Decision's been made to release it, but it'll just be after they've been confirmed by the committee at its next meeting. So it's just an interesting process issue.
Anissa's got a question.
Through the chair, Graham, the number 6, the record of code of conduct complaints, are you able to provide some kind of direction as to why the inquiry on that?
Actually, I don't think it was a private person and they just asked for a record of complaints.
Yeah.
And the council hasn't had any. It was over the last 2 years, sorry, and the council hasn't had any, so it was a very quick response.
Just curious.
But yeah, it wasn't an organisation from memory, just.
No, yeah.
Okay, is there any further questions? Someone like to move that we receive that information? Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Pauline. All in agreement, please say aye. Carried, thank you. Hamish, the monthly performance report. This is your paper if you want to take us through that. Thank you.
Brings my favourite colour, so
Yeah.
we get over the page.
Yeah.
See, missed. So there was a RFI return, and obviously missed that return coming in, and so that goes to send him over time, unfortunately.
Okay, any questions? I would like to move that we receive that information then. Pauline, thank you, Fiona. All in agreement with that, please say aye. Aye. Okay, that's carried, thank you. Now, I'll do Ross and or Robbie, because this will be, yeah, your last operations committee. So yeah. Mr. Chair.
Well, if I just,
The Deputy Chair.
through the chair, just initially, thank you, Robbie, for filling in on the day. I was sending snowbound and was able to zoom in. So I've got a few notes here, Robbie, but do you want to?
You lead off and then Robbie will fill in.
Okay, you fill in the gaps. So normally we're a month behind with these reports, but we're actually just a week out from, so it's quite a novelty to be so up to date with what's happening in the operations room. A few things. It was really looking at the highlights and the lowlights of the year just gone, and there were some significant events. We had storm events in July and August, and the financial implications of that. Cleverly Road, we all know about that and the reconstruction of that. The windstorm event in October, causing severe damage, and the loss of power, which had significant implications on our water service delivery. So, and some of the highlights, the council maintained PCA accreditation. Successful year for the Emily Pool Waikari Basin Scheme amalgamation, and those of us that went to have a look at that scheme, it was fantastic to see that work. Had 0 E. coli transgressions and 90% of capital program delivered. And also litter bins rationalised and the cost reduced, so that happened in last year. The toilet cleaning and mowing contracts were let in the last year. And the halls project in Chewiot and Waikari, which Karen's part of, has been progressing well, and we're looking forward to the Maskell's Road meeting tonight. That is the end of my report. Robbie.
I took the liberty of forwarding this to the members.
Thank you.
We won't have had a chance to read it yet because I've been involved in the financials. But yeah, it was over the year. We spoke about Kiwi Camp and some of the problems there, teething problems there, and vandalism. The question was asked around future-proofing some of our plant that are on private property, and we were assured that a lot of that's all in hand. In fact, the likes of Huranui #1 is on public on a road in Brazil. Our wastewater consents, we've got some coming up to expire in 2027, and we're working on those. Roading program, the officers have been doing through a walkover, preparing for the next season. They're 60% through that. An interesting thing is they're going to do a nighttime roading audit. That's when the best work's done at night, and that's around checking all your signage and bits and pieces of the furniture of the road. A highlight around recycling is that we had no trucks were sent back, but of note is that we had 0.73 contamination, and our self-imposed level is 5%, but the plant in town will reject a truck only at 10%. So it goes to show how far ahead of the game our team is on the recycling. Now, working away, we've got the mandatory glass collection coming up in 2027. That one's been, options for that's been worked through. Three Waters was a bit alarming. Some naughty people. There was quite a 251 out of 395 restrictors checked. Were either removed or drilled out or tampered with. The sample area was taken, and it's shown some concerns. So we do have the mechanisms to recharge and recoup for that, but a new system coming up in our year 3 will give us the ability to detect more drops in flow and things like that, and monitor that sort of thing. Another change, customer services. The team are now working, some of them on a rotating basis, some from home, and before we get alarmed about call centres and things, it's working very well because the two that are working from home are taking the first phone call. The whole system's linked in together so no one misses a beat. And so they're answering the call, and it means that the people at the counter aren't talking to someone at the counter with a phone ringing behind them, which is very annoying. So that was quite interesting to hear that and the feedback on that is that that's working very well, because they're sitting at home in the zone, and then they can pass things on to the right place, just as if they were working out the back here. The rest will take in as read, I think, Ross.
Okay, thanks, team. Very good. Is there any questions, Ross or Robin? Well done. Someone like to move, someone like to second that we received. Thank you, Ross. Seconder. Thank you, Vince. All in agreement to that first slide. Okay, that's carried. Thank you, Fiona, for Audit and Risk Committee update. Thank you.
I'm going to start by taking most of it as read. And, but of particular note, I guess, there's the insurance policy. There's been a significant increase in that, which is going to, I guess, we'll end up, we need to have a talk with our communities again, so it gives them an opportunity. It's been dealt with, but it's interesting that the renewal of the resulted in premiums of 904, just over 904, as compared to 598 last year. So that is significant. We're still working on our risk profile. We're making some progress on that, which is good. And then there's the rest of things we discussed in the head. So let's take accepted.
Any questions for Fiona?
Oh,
No.
No.
I did.
Not if you
I
want
had a
lunch.
question. I had a question, but Jason's just stepped out of the room. Oh, I was just wondering, just in regards to that, the change in the insurance policies. I'm aware that when we were doing the long-term plan, Robbie, you certainly raised it, and we knew that it was going to be at a higher rate, but I just wondered if we'd allowed for that level of premium increase and what the impact of that might be on our budgets.
So the answer is no, we didn't allow for it. And obviously that's gonna put our budgets into the deficit.
It's quite a chunk. And I just, I wondered if, I mean, we had, I'm sure if I recall correctly, we'd allowed some increase in premium, but not to that level.
So,
Thanks, Dave.
yes, through the chair, there's a 50% increase in insurance premium. That seems horrendous. I compare to my increase and other increases. Insurance is a change in policy.
Basically what happened was that the reinsurance market, so most of the reinsurance for public liability was with Lloyd's, and Lloyd's withdrew from that reinsurance market. So they scrambled around to find another reinsurer. They found one, but considerably more expensive and less cover. So you're getting it both ends.
And it's a local company, isn't it? It's a New Zealand company.
No,
No, I thought it was.
no, the reinsurance. I can't remember.
Sorry. Did you have another question, Dave?
No, I saw it was public liabilities.
Yeah.
So it was a generic insurance on vehicles and.
No, that's not too bad. It's not too bad. It's so the public liability traditionally for local government, because we are the last man standing in so many circumstances, we get hit with the bills, and Lloyd's as a reinsurer said we don't want to be in that market anymore. So.
And it's been raised in a lot of forums because every council is in the same boat. Vince, question?
What happens if the whole reinsurance part of it pulls out of that type of insurance? What do we do then?
So number one, you won't have any insurance, and there are certain circumstances where we don't have insurance, and that means that ratepayers end up paying.
I just checked with Jason on the insurance that we've got that was New Zealand.
Yeah, any sentences, New Zealand Limited are our professional indemnity and public liability insurance for commission.
The reinsurance is overseas.
That's their component. Previously, we did rely on the London market to provide that legal insurance for local government in New Zealand and Australia, and the reason why they pulled out is the claims have just gotten too big, and the claims have been generated from claims on commercial property that wasn't the intention initially, and so making losses and decided not to provide cover, and so Chuck have provided cover, but it has cost us.
Okay, questions answered. Happy day. Robbie, another question?
Yeah, I just wondered, is Local Government New Zealand, what organisation like that ever looked at a self-insuring system, or is that what that insurance company, what the company were called that we talked about a while ago, that we got caught up with?
Riskpool.
Riskpool, is that basically what that is?
Yeah. Yep.
Dave?
Just put it in perspective on it, considering what I pay on insurance, it's not excessive because it's, I just times it by what I pay for the size of business that you've got. You cry if you know how much we paid, and we're pretty sharp on it. So it's not horrendous.
I think the key with this one is that it's
Just
doubled,
Yeah.
but what you get out of it is dropped. So, but we have to have something, but it does make a difference to our budget.
And I mean, we have had those discussions at Audit and Risk, about this self-insured sort of process, but.
What I'm trying to say is, what a business would have to pay is pretty reasonable, and what an individual would have to pay, relatively speaking, probably
Yeah,
A
I
lot of
get-
vehicles out there.
yeah, I know, that's right. And I think, just a windscreen in a vehicle nowadays, to get replaced is sort of, like with all the heat sensors and all that sort of drama, I mean, it's just like frightening. We need to move on, but Vince, have you got?
Just a comment about other community organisations like I'm on the Knox, Hall, which you can trust, and our insurance is going up to 10, maybe 11,000 relative, so we've actually dropped our cover down, so we're paying about 6,000 now.
Right.
Because you've got to cut your cloth at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And what, it sounds, it does get horrendous for small organisations.
Yeah, and I think that was discussed, and that's what we've done as a council, taking all of those premiums and risk profiles out to community committees so they could make the decisions on the integrity of the hall of, whether it's full cover or whatever. And I think that paper's going out soon, isn't it, Jason?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
paper, the insurance, so that community committees can actually rationalise change or not their risk cover as they see it at the moment. Yeah, so that's going out to communities. Yeah. If there's no further questions for Fiona or the Audit and Risk Committee, Fiona's happy to move that, I think.
I am, yes.
Thanks, Karen. All in agreement with that, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, that's carried, thank you. And we have the Alma Springs Thermal Pool and Spa. That's, we'll just take that paper as read, unless there's anybody happy to move it. Thank you. Moved by Gary, second by thank you, Tom, that we received that information. All in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, that's done and dusted. It's 12:36, so I think we will meet our deadline of lunchtime, so that's good. Well done, team. And we will, I do think we need to be back in here ready to go by 1 o'clock. We have a deputation from Mr. Andrew Mason. You've got that information in front of you, so if we're ready to receive that information at 1, that would be appreciated. So thank you.
Is he gonna be here?
No, we'll bring him up here. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. We've got our afternoon session, and as scheduled on your agenda, we welcome Mr. Andrew Mason with us. Andrew has come to speak with us. I know Graham has given you the usual drill, Andrew, is what we do when we receive deputations or presentations from members of our community. So just recording, it's 10 minutes and 5 minutes of question and inquiry from councillors. And we'll see where we get to from there. So, do you know everybody around the table?
No, I've looked at the names on the various council websites and different things.
Okay, so I might just take a wee bit of time to actually get everybody to introduce themselves, so that you've got a scoping of where we'll sit in this part of the district, and then I'll hand over to you. So thank you.
Gary Jackson, South Ward,
Thank
reside
you.
here in Emily.
Robbie Brewer from South Ward, here in England.
Vince Daly, I'm on the East Ward, I live up in Chilliot.
David Slop, Medbury, Westwood.
Tom Davies, Westward and the Springs.
Pauline White, South Ward, Broomfield.
Ross Barnes, Westwood, Mount Hyford.
Kia ora, Andrew, Karen Armstrong, Westwood, Waikerie.
Yeah, Harris was Eastwood, Waipara now. Forgot where I lived, Belkian.
It's my, oh my God, it's my mate.
Been a long day.
That's great, thank you, thanks team for doing that, and we'll obviously have staff around the room as well, but it's great to have you with us, and we'll just start with your 10 minutes, and then we'll just have some questions of clarification, as I said, and then we'll go from there. But just for your information, you have sent us information that all councillors have got.
Okay.
You
cool.
might have some other that you want to
So I've
hand
got
around
some,
as well.
I've got some, hopefully, I don't know whether I've got enough, but I'll send it that way and that way. Here's the information that I sent.
Okay, so it's an add-on to what, thank you. And just for your information, her council has also received a letter from Mr. Hugh McIntosh, who's the president of the AMP. So just so that you're aware, you've probably had oversight of that.
I didn't say oversight, but I saw it afterwards.
Okay, so just so that we're all sitting on the same page as far as this goes, so that's great. Thanks, councillors. We'll give Andrew our undivided attention now for the next 10 minutes. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. And just by way of background, I'm a Amberley resident now of 13 years, I think. We live in Amberley House, the lovely place that Gary was a resident of for a number of years, and we farm there and also up at Colburn, so we're quite involved in the local community. Right, so thank you for giving me the time to talk today. Though there's several matters I want to talk to you about, I want to make it clear that I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the council's actions in allowing the Hamner Fate to compete directly against the community's 123-year-old Amberley show. That said, an examination of the matters relating to the council's actions with the Fate now over several years has raised issues which the community has just cause to be concerned about. The Amberley show is held each year, the Saturday after Labor Day, and this is a date set by the Royal Agricultural Show, and it's been this date for generations. Given the complex scheduling of AMP shows and the commitments these shows have as qualification events for other events such as Horse of the Year, which then lead, as it did this year, to an Olympic qualification for one rider, dates of individual shows are not able to be changed on a whim to suit external circumstances or people. By way of background, last year when the Fate was held, the day before the show, at least 6 stallholders from the year before opted to operate only at the Fate and not at the Amberley show because of the Fate's time constraints and stallholders, leading to too tight a time frame to break down and then set up again at the show. It's too early to appreciate the effect on stallholder numbers at the show this year, but as anyone will appreciate, effects such as these are a slow burn, over which time have the real potential to ruin what has been an incredible success now for 123 years. There have been many comments from the community that the Fate and show cater to different customers, as it were, and that may well be the case in a general sense, but it's not just stallholders of the show that the show competes with the Fate for. It's volunteers to help run the show, the vast number of judges for the wide range of entries, which cumulatively number in the thousands, and the entrants themselves, whether it be for the best saddle rider, the best milking goat or pet lamb exhibited by a kid under 5, or my personal favourite, the fruit loaf. Last year's show committee recently calculated that at least 2,000 volunteer hours per year per show are given by the community. Now that's significantly more than the entire population of Amberley giving an hour each. That's just on the organisation and the running of the event. The time spent on entries by competitors would be many, many times that, let alone parents' time and teachers' time with children who make up a huge component of the overall entries. I recently made a Lagoima request for information relating to council dealings with the Hamner Fate from August of 2023, essentially capturing only the 2023 Fate, which led to the provision of some information, albeit outside the statutory timeframes required. That said, there are at least 9 items of correspondence between an undisclosed council or council organisation employee and the Hamner Fate that were expressly withheld from release. Though there was a written attempt to characterise the withholding of this information to protect privacy, it was the reliance on clause 7.2(b)(2) of the Local Government Official Information Meetings Act, which relates to commercial sensitivity, that council used to formally withhold this information from me and therefore the community. The withheld information wasn't related to the commercial aspects of the FATE's lease of the reserve, as that information was itself provided. Though I have laid a complaint relating to the withholding of this information with the Chief Ombudsman on the 2nd of July, as at last week, it was still awaiting allocation of an investigator. In the meantime, all I and the community can conclude from the council withholding this information on commercially sensitive grounds is that it relates to a quantum of money being given to the Hamner Fate either as a subvention, grant or inducement by the council or one of its organisations. If I'm correct and the withheld information relates to the council giving money to the corporate Fate company, an organisation that also operates Fates in other regional centres, then this must be contrasted with the council charging in the same year $2,500 in fees to the AMP show to operate on the showgrounds, a council reserve, the day after the Fate. A reserve facility where the main building was initially erected, paid for by the AMP Association, and donated to the council and enjoyed by a large number of organisations many years since this donation. The next leg of my discussion with you today is in relation to the Queen Mary Historic Hospital Reserve. When the Crown contemplated giving this reserve to the council, a management plan was negotiated and created between the parties, and this plan was expressly agreed to as a document that the council must adhere to in consideration for receiving the Queen Mary Reserve. For those watching the live stream and those councillors and officers that have not read this document, it's publicly available online on the council's website. If you as councillors haven't read this document, I challenge you to do so, because it's apparent to me that a number of councillors and officers certainly haven't, as I contend there have been a considerable number of breaches of this plan over a number of years with regards to the Fate activities, and therefore a breach of your agreement with the Crown. Breaches that I suggest, should they continue, may put in jeopardy the council's continued ownership of the reserve. On 9th of July this year, I authored a paper outlining what I consider to be these breaches and asked that should be circulated among councillors and staff, which I understand has happened. In any case, I will table that same document here today with some minor corrections to spelling mistakes and ask that it form part of the minutes of this meeting, and that's attached to the handout that I gave you. Though I don't intend to read this 2-page document detailing these breaches, I will summarise some key points for the benefit of any viewers on the live stream. It's my contention that allowing the Hamner Fate to operate in the Queen Mary Reserve in the past years, council has failed to meet their obligations in policy 6, 8.1, 8.3 and 8.6 of the management plan. The breaches of these policies relate to both reserves past as a treatment centre for alcohol and drug dependency, and the council's requirements to manage this reserve cognizant of its history as well as the legal status of the reserve to the council and how this affects its management. And simply issuing the Fate liquor licences on the papers, thereby allowing them to operate liquor sales on the reserve with no allowance for any community input, as the council has consistently done, seems at best a failure to have read the management agreement and follow the requirements, or at worst, given a lack of financial disclosure, a coordinated scheme to subvert the community's interests for the betterment of a corporate entity owned well outside the district. Only with a fully notified liquor application enabling community input can the council consider to have discharged their duty under the management agreement. Should similar actions continue, council puts itself at risk of a judicial review of these actions, placing at best an unfair cost burden on ratepayers for the council failing to follow due process, and at worst a loss of the reserve to the community. Moreover, under policy 8.1 of the management plan, and unlike every other council reserve, the Queen Mary Reserve is explicitly characterised as a district-wide reserve. It is not a reserve there for the benefit of the residents and visitors of Hamner, such as the 26 other council reserves in Hamner. And this contrasting categorisation is clearly defined in the Parks and Reserves section on the council's website. Under policy 6 of the management plan, a clearly defined goal of the Queen Mary Reserve is to only allow uses, and I quote, that are consistent with the values of wellness in its widest context. Usefully, council in its long-term community plan have clearly defined Haranui wellness to include, and I quote again, our total sense of community. to apparently somehow fund and allow the use of a district-wide reserve by a company to compete against a 123-year-old community organisation, put the council's actions directly at odds with both its long-term community plan agreed with the community and the Queen Mary Reserve Management Agreement, placing the council clearly in breach of its agreement with the Crown and its own community.
Thanks, Andrew. I think it's actually really good that we have this information in front of us that we can ponder and reflect on. But it is really important that councillors have a chance to perhaps question for clarity in their minds what they've heard or what they've read alongside the presentation. So I'm going to allow about 5 minutes for that to happen, and then we'll see where that leads us. So thank you. Councillors, you've all heard that information. It may have triggered some thoughts of clarification in your minds, and if that is the case, now's the time for you to ask those questions directly to Andrew.
No questions of
No
clarification, no questions of clarification.
Yeah, okay, so nothing at all. So, Andrew, I guess it's just a point that I would make, and it's in regard to the liquor licensing, and I just, if I may, I'm no longer the chair of that committee, and I guess just to provide some information, perhaps, that when an application is received from the district licensing committee, that is publicly notified, if you like, and objectors to that application can be received, and that often is a trigger for a hearing. So I rather than the majority are decided on the papers, but if there is an objection coming from members of our community that are deemed to have interest, no greater than the general public, that would trigger a hearing and then an evaluation or a review of that. So I guess wanted to clear that up, that it's not, there is a process for that to happen that sits outside this council chambers as a.
And I guess it's how widely notified the application is. Because I suggest in past years it hasn't been particularly widely notified.
Oh, well, I mean, I haven't come here to debate it, but it actually, it's a public notification. So if you were deemed to have an interest greater than the public, I think there's the words in the act, that you could object to that. So just clarification, I guess, for both of us, really.
Yes, but I guess that doesn't give the man in the street or the person in the street the opportunity to object. Where in the context of the information I gave you, given it's been a alcohol and drug dependency facility, and the council's management plan, together with council's responsibilities under the long-term community plan, everybody in the community has a right. And to somehow, I suppose, take away those rights when they do have them under the long-term community plan, when they do have them under the council's requirement to adhere to the management plan of the Queen Mary Reserve. Who's the special people that get to have some say? They have some sort of status or authority that might be greater than the rest of the community, when in fact it's the whole community that really does have a vested interest in that activity. I would suggest that there's no one in the Haranui community that should be excluded from that process, given their community's input into the long-term plan and everything that relates to the Haranui wellness and everything that talks about that, given their involvement in the community and their council's requirement to adhere to a management plan, which they're not doing. I would say that everybody in the community should have an opportunity to have some input, not just a few special people that somehow have some greater status, however that might come about. And so that it should be notified irrespective, a fully notified hearing.
Yeah, probably takes a bit longer to unwind that, but yeah, okay, I'll just receive, we'll just receive that information, thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, okay, so if there's no further, oh, sorry, Robbie.
Oh, just very quickly, thank you, Andrew. A lot of work gone into this. What outcome are you seeking?
I think the liquor licence issue on the reserve is something the council needs to look at and consider very deeply. There's more feeling than I first appreciated about that. And I say that because people just come out of the blue and said because there was a press article a while ago on it. I didn't really, for me, it was also this. I didn't really appreciate that it was probably almost a bigger thing for a lot of people than the fate competing against the show. I didn't appreciate that the liquor issue was a bigger issue for a lot of people as the show, for being clear. And it is, especially people that have been through the facility. Is that. And council needs to figure out what that means and deal with that probably a little bit more sensitively than they have done. And in following years, why on earth would the council allow one of their facilities to be used by a corporate entity to compete against a local show? And I think there's a lot of feeling out there in the community about that. It's not like you don't know when the show is. I can tell you when the show is in 2032. I can tell you when the show is in 2042. We know when the show is. So there's no great surprise in that. And so the council should take meaningful steps so that one of their council controlled reserves isn't used by a corporate entity to go and put one over a local show. I mean, just, forget about the council giving money to the fate. Just allowing that to happen is, there's a lot of community about that.
I'm just conscious of our timing, actually, so I've got, I'm going to have two questions here. I've got Vanessa, quick question, and Fiona, a quick question.
Andrew, has there been a clash in the past?
The last few years they have run the day before,
Right.
which ostensibly isn't a clash, but last year we lost, the show lost 6 stallholders from the year before.
Okay.
This year the fates elected to run on the same day, which is a clash, but we would contend that the same week is a clash. I mean, there's 51 other weeks in the year. Go and pick one of them.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to see that the fate have. It kind of comes back to each individual entity to make those decisions, though, doesn't it? Do you think? You know what I mean? Like,
well, the show doesn't have the ability. The show's scheduling is scheduled ad infinitum. Because, like as I said, there was a rider this year who collected points at the local AMP shows that then put her into the Horse of the Year, which then put her into an Olympic qualification. Unfortunately, she didn't get to go to the Olympics, long story, but the local AMP shows is a pathway, and the Horse of the Year pathway for those particular riders, very important, and you can't just go and change things. You can't change dates because of qualification events. So there's actually a lot more to the show scheduling than, it's not just about the states. So they don't get changed. They don't get changed. So the show is unable to change. It's fixed.
Okay.
The fate's corporate entity. They can pick another day.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Quick question, Fiona.
Just very quick, thanks, Madam Mayor. So what you're asking for is that no council reserves are available for anybody who might draw people or business, whether it be a corporate or charity type organisation, no other reserves around the area should be available on the day of the show or the week before the show.
Yeah.
That we shouldn't grant anything across the whole district.
Yeah, and it would go the same.
That's clear.
The Murray show, or the Cheviot show, it's not just the Amberley show. There's not that many AMP shows in our Haranui district.
Yeah.
There's one less this
You're
year.
clear. I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
That's what you were
Thank you.
suggesting
Yeah.
on behalf of Lisbon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just to, I know we've gone over time, so final question.
Yes, sorry, if I may, just because I've heard you mention it twice. So you mentioned money to the fate. Is that an assumption that you've made? Do you have any
An assumption that
evidence
I've
to
made
suggest that the
because
council
of
has done that?
the clause in the act that was used to withhold the 9 emails is a clause that specifically relates to commercial aspects.
Would you agree that commercial aspects could be outside money being provided by the council?
It could be, but given the wealth of other information that I was provided, which included lease term, license terms and that sort of thing, it seemed to me that I had the full breadth of all the information. And I am aware that the Fate seeks and receives significant sponsorship from a lot of other entities. And if I had to pick it, I'd say the Hamner Hot Pools gave them some money. If I had to guess, I'd say that's what it is. And eventually, if I can get that money through get that information through the Ombudsman, I'll then know. And I intend to pursue that.
Yeah, so you've got that, you're just waiting
It's a
here,
process
you're
that I
waiting
just-
here, you're waiting judgment from the Ombudsman and
Yep.
that's the pathway you've taken, so it's not for us to actually intervene into that process, so.
Unless you want to just give me the emails now, I know.
Yeah,
You're
look,
welcome to do that.
yeah, you've started a process and I think you've followed that from Andrew,
Yes, I
as
certainly
you're
will.
entitled to do.
Yep.
Okay, so look, I'm conscious of the time
Thank you.
aspect that,
I've got one more. Everyone get one?
That one.
Yes, thank you.
and Andrew, just for your information, I am going to ask the officers to respond to the letter to Hugh as president of the
Yeah,
AMP
thank
show because so I will ask the officers to respond to that accordingly. But thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your time and your thorough presentation. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Right, councillors, we're now at the public excluded part of our agenda today. So with that, you will have all read that and considered that it is appropriate and meets the criteria for public exclusion. So with that, can I ask someone to move us into public excluded? Thank you, Fiona. Before that, all in agreement with that, please say aye. That's carried, thank you.
May I just note the date at the top of the public excluded section?
Three. Should be 24.